Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the season opener of the 17th season of the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing and proudly hosted by none other than SimRacing International. That's right ladies and gentlemen, after our pre-season test a week ago we finally raised the curtain on an all-new season of the Premier Weekend Racing GT3 Championship, and goodness me what a season we've got ahead of us. 60 drivers, 10 rounds of racing and 60 minutes of racing each round. It is definitely going to be an absolute thriller from start to finish, and with our three driver classes looking to take to the grid week in, week out, whether it be Elite, Pro or Inter, we're certain to see plenty of drama, plenty of tense racing action and also plenty of championship battles. And we open up proceedings today here in Germany at the Sachsenring circuit. A circuit that spans 2.26 miles in length and having been opened in its latest of dedicated racing guise as a 1996, this is a circuit that, whilst perhaps overshadowed somewhat by its neighbours within the country of Germany, is a circuit not to be underestimated. With a grand total of 12 corners at its core, it is a circuit which is split into two equal halves with a winding sequence of bends, gradually giving away to a much more fast-flowing sequence of bends as the lap goes on, and also with some short straights as well to offer up rather limited overtaking opportunities. Around here, track position is key, but also knowing how exactly to abuse strategy is going to be crucial. But then again, never rule out somebody being brave under braking, as we've seen throughout years gone by. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this broadcast of all the racing action, this being a post-round broadcast for your viewing pleasure. What does that mean exactly? Well, the racing you see today is not actually live. It occurred as of Sunday, the 11th of January 2026, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live in this recorded broadcast, which is being premiered on the YouTube channel of SimRacing International. Indeed, go to youtube.com and go to SimRacing International, SRI, and you can be tuning in there to our weekly broadcasts, many of them live, but also quite a few of them being post-round recorded due to scheduling challenges. But the great news is, if this is your first time tuning in to a post-round broadcast, well, by the end of it you will think it was live, because this will be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. And indeed, here in the content booth we do not know what happens in the qualifying session, which is currently ongoing, 45 minutes in length. It's an extended qualifying session and we still got the best part of 25 minutes left of it to go, nor do we know what happens in the upcoming race itself, so it's as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for us here, and indeed that's what we're targeting for you guys and girls tuning in. Now of course there may be some of you tuning into this premiere on YouTube tonight who may already know the outcome. If so, we do ask that whilst you're very welcome to engage in the YouTube chat, please avoid any potential spoilers where possible, just in case there are a couple of individuals out there right now tuning in who do not know, and therefore we don't remove the magic for them, as we're going to be finding out as we go who exactly are going to be our winners in our season opener. In the content booth you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action as it unfolds, and it's a pleasure to be back once again for another season of the UKSimRacing GT3 series. And goodness me, this series has been synonymous with me for the best part now of, I want to say, 4.5 years, albeit also it's been the hands of many a talented commentator over its time, including none other of course Tim Cox from Tim Cox Media Productions. But I'm back once again today to bring you all the racing action as it unfolds. And as we make our way into this season opener, well, let's set the scene and talk a little bit about our calendar for this season. So last time out, of course, on the 4th of January, we were in Australia. Not too many of our drivers were able to make the flights due to the fact they're all recovering from the turkey tinsel and the New Year celebrations, but those who did on the 4th of January definitely got some major insights at the Adelaide Street Circuit. We got to see some absolutely terrific performances. We'll come on to those shortly. But after that, well, today we begin the true journey, and now every round matters and every point achieved will be scored in anger, whereby today it's the Sachsenring's full course, and it's going to be a sunny day today, after which we'll then make our way to the US of A for the Daytona International Speedway. Now you may be wondering, why is there a question mark next to it on the right hand side of our calendar? Well, those question marks indicate our mixed or potential wet weather condition rounds, and there will be a light rain forecast typically, but there'll be a relatively low chance of rain, which aligns to the official schedule for the iRacing GT3 Sprint Series, and therefore we look forward to seeing whether the weather is going to mix things up. But it'll be Daytona for round number 2 on the 18th of January. Well, there it's all going to be about the slipstream rather than track position, and then we make our way to Portugal for round number 3. On the 25th of January, it's going to be a trip to the Algarve International Circuit, more commonly referred to Portimao, and there we'll see our drivers weave and wind their way through the young circuit that definitely feels as though it was erected the best part of 7 or 8 decades ago, given how how it has such a classic feel. And then on the 1st of February, it will be heading back to the US of A for the Miami Grand Prix circuit at the Miami International Autodrome, and then it's definitely going to be a much fresher circuit for our drivers, where it'll be their first exposure to it in several cases. And in round number 5, we complete the first half of the season. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you, it's Monza, but it's Monza combined, which means we'll be marrying together both the Grand Prix layout of the circuit and its extensive oval. And on the 8th of February, it's definitely going to be intrigue as to who's going to be the master of straight line speed and willing to run the least amount of downforce. In round number 6, we'll make our way straight into the second half of the season. There'll be no breather, and there we'll head back to the USA once again. We'll be gathering the air miles, and it will be in the state of Virginia that our drivers take on the second of our mixed condition races, and that'll be its full course on the 15th of February. But then from the countryside of Alton all the way to down under in Australia, we'll be seeing our drivers make the way to the Mount Panorama circuit on the 22nd of February for round 7, and that'll be to prove who's the king of the mountain at the Bathurst circuit. Then we head to Germany for the Nürburgring Grosser Preisstrecke, or the Grand Prix Strecke as it literally translates, and our drivers will be taking on that variant of the circuit in what will be round number 8 on the 1st of March in our final mixed conditions race round. And then it will be to Italy we go for our final 2 rounds of the season, and we'll conclude things in Italy. Firstly, it'll be at the Mazzano Grand Prix circuit on what will be the 8th of March, round number 9, and in round 10, it'll be the Imola Grand Prix circuit, where at one of the homes of Ferrari, we'll see the curtain come down. But will it be a Ferrari driver that comes victorious, or will it be somebody else? We'll have to see on the 15th of March. So a long way to go. It's a long calendar, and all our drivers will need to be set and ready for the test that waits them. But as they make the way into this round, well, of course, let's talk a little bit about a host circuit for today. And as we can see, it is the Sachsenring's full course, located in the village of Hohenstein-Ernstau in the Zwickau district of the Saxony state of Germany. 2.26 miles in length, 3.63 kilometres, depending on your preference of units. But one thing that doesn't change is the 13 corners that make up this course. But as the drivers make the way around here, they'll have to keep in mind this circuit is a far cry from the original circuit, which spanned the best part of 5.5 miles when it was a public road course. However, that public road course was shut down in 1990 due to safety concerns, where it was a much higher speed circuit, but as machinery was evolving in the 80s and 90s and the top speed of domestic and national rating series in Germany started to head upwards of the hundreds of miles an hour, where it was decided that the circuit was no longer safe and instead a dedicated one needed to be erected. And so this circuit was born. And as a result, if you're wondering, well, how popular has it been? It's been extremely popular since its opening in the late 1990s and played host to multiple rounds on an annual basis of the likes of what has been Moto Grand Prix series and also none other than the Deutsche Tourer Mark Series, or DTM. So as the drivers make the way around here, they'll definitely find themselves racing in amongst historical tarmac, and they'll be looking to add their names to the history books. But to do well around here, they'll need to be ready to take on the combinations of corners, which turns 1 through to 5 are all about low to medium speed apexes and negotiating some very tricky elevation changes. Making some of these corners blind apexes as they make the way through. And then as they head towards turn number 6, they'll find suddenly the lap speed starts to build up as they make their way through a long sweep in what is quintuple hander of left-hand corners. But by the time they get to turn number 10, it'll be flat out as they go, all the way through the kink of 10 and in towards the curve of 11. And downhill they'll roar in towards turn number 12. There it's a sweep in left-hand bend, which will see our drivers make the way into another short straight, hit turn number 13, and that's where they'll complete the story of the lap, only to do it again or see that checkered flag. And a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for the brilliant simulator, but also the absolutely fantastic track maps that come within it, which give us the opportunity to talk about our circuits. But the one limitation, of course, of a track map is you don't get to see it in 3 dimensions. It's only 2-dimensional, and we'll go from the bird's eye view very shortly to the circuit side view. But before we do, of course, we'll only do it once this season. We did it in the pre-season opener, but we'll do it once in the main season, and let's talk about our rule changes for this season, because some rules have been slightly modified. Firstly, car setup-wise, we have seen the maximum fuel loads restricted to 70% now for all eligible cars, a slight increase from the 60% we saw previously, and that will likely open up the pit window slightly and offer up some more strategic opportunities. As for the qualifying session for this season, we've gone from our previous closed qualifying format of 10 minutes, where all our drivers took to an isolated instance of the circuit, to a 45-minute open format, which is currently ongoing. So therefore, all our drivers, they will all be out on the circuit, have the option to be out on the circuit with each other at the same time. And when you do have for this season opener, for example, the best part of what is 48 drivers have made their way to Germany out of the possible 60. Of course, some drivers opting to use this as their drop round, More on that very shortly. In preparation for the Daytona 24-hour official event in a weekend's time, well, understandably, all our drivers will be having to try and find some space out on circuit to try and deliver their best possible lap. Now, as for the race, each driver has 2 fast repairers available. That's 1 more than we previously had, but the instant point limits have also been slightly reduced in order to strengthen what is the rules and regulations around fair racing and clean racing with that. We've seen the drive-through penalty limit now drop to 18 instant points, and should they get to 26, it will be an automatic race disqualification. As for the drop rounds for this season, whereas previously we had 2 dropped rounds and you could drop any round amongst the season, as of this season, we're only allowing 1 dropped round, and it is permitted for rounds 1 through to 9. So that means you can drop one of your scores between now and the penultimate round of the season inclusive, but when you get to the season finale, it's undroppable, and you've got to be there to get the points. Otherwise, you may just miss out right at the end of the season. So definitely, we're going to be seeing all drivers giving it their all from season start all the way to the final checkered flag. But without further ado, let's make our way back to circuit side and see how everybody's getting in the qualifying session. So as we look back to our circuit, well, right now the fastest driver out there does seem to be 17 minutes left to go, Riise Saunders. And, well, Riise definitely seems to love GT3 racing, no doubt about it. You will have seen him, of course, on the grid for the season opener of the Thursday GT3 series here at SimRacing International. And there he put on an absolutely splendid display in what was our pro class, if my memory serves me correctly. But here he's in the elite class. And, well, if you're wondering why there's a slight class differential there, it is based on the relative scale of the drivers we have competing in each series, so don't get too hung up on that. And also the fact, of course, keep in mind that this series only has 3 driver classes compared to our Thursday series, which has 4 and 2 splits with it. But still, putting that aside, Saunders right now the fastest out there, subject to lap being validated by the automated track stewarding system on iRacing, and we will see that when our drivers make the way to the grid. As Saunders goes out very wide there, coming out to turn number 11 in towards 12, that'll be an invalidated lap. And he is currently 8 thousandths faster compared to Henrik Strand. And, well, talking about some stories from last time out in Australia in our pre-season opener, well, Strand was definitely the driver who set the time tower alight when it came to qualifying, but he also managed to set everybody's hearts ablaze when he ended up in the barrier at turn number 4 early on in the race. Albeit, here is Henrik Strand making his way out of the pit lane there for the BetaFrost team in the lovely liveried Ford Mustang, but taking his time to exit there, respecting the fact that he's got quite a lot of traffic coming on down. He's just going to wait for it to clear, and then he'll build himself up to speed because he doesn't want to impede anybody. But he, at long last, gets out there, and he definitely was one of the big stars of the pre-season test in Adelaide. And it was him, William Arnesen, and also Phoenix Racing Blues' Hayden Miller, Arnesen being of the same team of Strand. They all impressed in qualifying, albeit Strand was the driver who put himself on pole, but it was Hayden Miller in the end who managed to bring home the victory. Now, where is Hayden Miller, I hear you ask? He's currently parked up in the pit lane. He's behind the catch fences there. I don't think we can get a good angle of him. In fact, yes, we can. So he's on the grid here for Phoenix Racing. And when I caught up with Hayden after the pre-season test race in Australia, he said to me that it wasn't caught on broadcast, but after he'd left the pit lane, he'd had a bit of a moment with one of the barriers in Australia. And, well, the problem with having an argument with a barrier in Adelaide is the barrier doesn't lose the argument, as his car was to find out, whereby for the rest of the race in his second stint, he had to drive every straight at a 15-degree angle on the steering wheel, and still was lapping as good as anybody else, and he brought home the win there. Now, of course, the win and all the victories in the pre-season test are only really for bragging rights and also for information. They don't really mean anything more than that, but it's a sign of what's to come, and he was looking quite quick in that Corvette Z06 GT3 R Stingray, and we look forward to seeing what he can do here today. Meanwhile, William Arnesen, he was the man who decided to dare the Audi in Australia, and in the end he's decided the Audi's not the right car for him, but he stayed with the German marques, and he's decided to go to the Mercedes AMG Evo instead to start off his season. And I do believe our drivers have 1 car swap available to them as the season goes on, should they choose to do so. But any more than that, and they will then start to incur the wrath of the penalty system for the series, where they will lose points. But William Arnesen decided to brave the Audi, and we thought it was a fortuitous choice, and it did work out for him, until it didn't, when it all went wrong on the opening lap. However, if we've ever seen a 360-degree spin, which definitely could have got 10 out of 10 for style points in Australia, he definitely delivered it. And, well, if you didn't check out last week's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely recommend you do so when you have a chance, even if it's just to see Arnesen somehow finding a way to spin through the opening 3 corners at Adelaide on the opening lap and not collect anyone and keep the car going. Yes, it was that impressive, to be fair. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest, but it doesn't win him any prizes. But I can tell you one thing right now, if I was a judge and it was the Olympics, I would have been pulling out my 10 board from underneath the desk. In fact, I don't seem to have it with me today. Nonetheless, that's talking about our elite drivers. What about in the pro class? Well, in pro, it was one name in particular that stood strong, albeit he's currently not out on circuit. He's in the pit lane at the moment. They're doing work on setting up the car as we look to a different pro of Adam Hedgecock, albeit he was impressive. More on him very shortly. And the pro who impressed the most at Adelaide was none other than Peter Cox, who, returning to the grid after a significant time out, in the end showed that his consistency, which he has been known for many a season and many a year, had not left him, as he took a 4th place start in qualifying all the way through to a runaway win. And could that be perhaps one of the stories of the season? Well, we'll have to see, because, of course, he's not quite in qualifying yet, but he might be waiting until the very end of the session to go out there. Some drivers do decide to do that, hoping that others might have exhausted themselves enough that there's going to be some space out on circuit. So when we do the maths, of course, 2.26 miles divided by almost 50, well, that's not many points of a mile to each driver out here, as we're seeing Hedgecock and one of his fellow drivers finding out as they tuck right in behind. Albeit, of course, keep in mind, when you are in qualifying trim, the rules and regulations about overtaking and trying to make moves on each other, they completely change, whereby that McLaren right now finds itself very much crowded in behind and not able to get on through as Hedgecock runs out wide there. But I wonder if he was aided on that journey, as meanwhile that is Rob Windsor going spinning around there on the exit turn 6 into 7, and an easy mistake to make there for the UKSimRacing McNish driver. They named after, of course, Alan McNish, the decorated racing driver, and indeed perhaps not as successful in Formula 1 compared to some of his other British peers, but a very good commentator and a very good sports analyst as well is Alan McNish. But as we look to Gilles Lecky, a newcomer to the grid today in the number 15, looking good there in his Porsche 992 machinery. We look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. And indeed, it looks as though the team right now have gone for a bit of a skeletal livery. And, well, I think that might be a half-and-half tribute in a way to Rexy from AO Racing. Rexy, of course, the dinosaur car that races in the World Endurance Championship, the WEC, and also has its sister car of Roxy, I do believe. But where were we? We were talking about, of course, the pros. So Peter Cox at the moment, not out there, but he definitely was the driver who impressed the most when it came to lost him out in Adelaide. Adam Hedgecock, I should say, as I stumble over my words, he was also very impressive there, and, well, how was he impressive exactly? It wasn't necessarily in qualifying, but in the race itself, he showed a very tenacious approach to attacking, whereby he was firm but fair with his rivals, and we look forward to seeing what he might be able to do here today. Albeit right now, qualifying, he is not going his way at all, as he's opted for the Aston Martin Vantage V8 Evo for this season, and one of the newer GT3s on the iRacing grid. We look forward to what he can do with that, because this is not the fastest car in a straight line, nor is it the best in the corners, but it's a very strong middle grounder for a front engine, mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, and therefore he'll be hoping that the fact this car is very welcoming to its driver is one of those cars that naturally encourages you to push it harder and harder, and does not really have a limit to that push until you go way too far. Well, I can imagine the pro driver here will definitely be one who comes alive as the season goes along. Now, as for your Interclass, which is our new class, a conglomeration of the Premiers and also the Evo drivers in the previous season. So in a way, if the Elites are your top class and your Pros are the middle class, then suddenly you can imagine the Interclass, I was about to say they are your bottom class there, but that makes it sound as though they're the peasantry of the grid. They're not quite. Think of them more as what would be your novices or your least experienced drivers perhaps, but they're also drivers who are very eager to shine and gradually improve the pace and ability as they go on. Well, here's Andre Montine, one of many a driver for Axis SimSport, of which we do have two Axis SimSport teams on the grid this season, Axis SimSport Y and Axis SimSport Z as well, and we look forward to seeing what they can do. But in the Interclass, it was not Andre Montine who impressed in Australia. He wasn't there. The driver who impressed the most was none other than Robin Pownier, and there he is. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, we are not deceiving you. He's not in his traditional Corvette Z06 GT3R. He has gone to the Mercedes AMG Evo for this season, but he's still part of the SimCoach team. However, that Mercedes did him very well at Adelaide, in the fact that in the end he converted a brilliant pole position all the way through to a race win, despite the fact he had pressure throughout from Daniel Paynes and also in the early stages, Alexander Wingmark. Now, we do have some new faces on the grid, Alexander Wingmark being one of them. He's currently parked up in the pit lane, right down the back there for BetaFrost in the blue Porsche, albeit he's been obscured very slightly by Richard Jones' BMW M4 Evo, the slow and steady racing driver, back once again, which is great to see. And on the theme of what is returning drivers, we do have here returning to the Pro class once again, and returning to the grid as a whole, the Connor Bros team from the US of A, and here is Sean Connor in his McLaren 720 GT3 Evo. But as he makes his way up the hill, we're very happy to see Sean back, given the fact the Connor brothers made their debut in Season 16, and whilst they perhaps didn't have the biggest standout results, they got stuck in and enjoyed some good battling, and they commented throughout the season how they were enjoying being on the grid, and they were really looking forward to the subsequent season, i.e. the Season 17, and feeling as though they could really start to mount a charge. I think Season 16 was more of a familiarisation season, which it does sometimes take you a whole season, really to get to grips with the grid, the drivers you're racing with, and get a feel for where you are and how you want to improve. But after that, it was all looking forward. But looking from one McLaren to another, we look to Phoenix Racing's Grant Miller, who makes his way around. And I had the pleasure of catching up with Grant in the build-up to the season opener, and he mentioned the fact, as he bounces over the apex curve there of turn number 8. Indeed, I thought the car was coming a bit loose there, but he seems to have got the suspension set up nicely. He's saying about the fact that the team as a whole, well, they're split into two for this season. You have the main Phoenix Racing team, which consists of Grant and also his son Hayden, as well as other members of the team. And you also have the three-wheeler racing team. So that's the Wheeler family of what is Tom Wheeler, and none other than Harvey Wheeler and Max Wheeler, with Tom being in the interclass like Grant. But on top of that, the other members of the Wheeler family up in the elite class, but they will be representing Phoenix Racing as a collaboration team known as Three-Wheeler Racing, or 3WR, by Phoenix Racing. And the whole aim of this season for both teams is to improve, to build up pace and see how far they can go and potentially make a championship charge. But also another thing Grant was saying to me, and I've learned something new over the course of last week, ladies and gentlemen, thanks to this man. This McLaren, well, it's powered by a V8, it's a dual turbo V8, but I've been saying for some time that it's a British made V8. I've been so very wrong. In fact, it's a V8 based off of the Nissan R390 GT1 V8 engine, and well, the schematic was purchased, and indeed a reference engine and a prototype was taken, and then the British manufacturer McLaren worked with a British company called Ricardo in order to put together the engine you see in this machine, and it's also been used in several road car iterations of McLaren, including the 720S road car. And if you want another bit of intrigue, the turbo system in this car is actually the same turbo system as fitted to a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 9. I didn't know that either, and that just goes to show you that parts are reusable across cars, and sometimes you find that parts across cars can go from very different machines. I never would have expected a Mitsubishi Evo's turbo system to be in a modern day McLaren GT3 racer, but there we go. And as he makes his way onwards, he's currently in 5th place in the interclass and 24th overall is Grant Miller, and he'll be hoping for a bit more time out there as he goes, given the fact that right now time is running out. But as we run low on time, William Arnesen now is the man at the very top in the Mercedes AMG Evo Elite and overall. Head of Riise Saunders by the best part of 200, and Henrik Riise Strand, as we do look to the third place man, who I do believe we'll be referring to as Henrik Strand from this point onwards, and every so often throwing his middle name in there. I'm sure Henrik will correct me if it's an extended surname. These surnames always do catch me out every so often. I do apologise in advance, Henrik, if right now you're sat there thinking, no, it's Riise Strand. We'll get that corrected next time. If so, do let me know. But the Ford Mustang driver here right now, your third fastest, but when you consider your top three are separated by only 300ths in totality, well, it is looking very good between them all. Meanwhile, in the Pro class, it is Kyle Roy for Miraca Group M Esports in his Corvette 06, who currently is the fastest of the drivers there, ahead of Hendrik Zilker, to the tune of what has been a grand total, I do believe, of a 10th in fact. Hendrik Zilker right now for Old Duty Cars, back once again, but he's decided to be a convert from the Mercedes AMG to the Ford Mustang for this season. And when you do keep in mind that this man joined the grid 3 seasons ago in season 14, and well, there he started off and he made waves immediately by chasing down podiums from his very first pro race. Well, right now Zilker to be right up there towards the top. This could be his season to take on the Pro Championship momentum. However, Kyle Roy, new to the grid of the Sunday GT3 series, might be looking to scupper that. But Zilker tucks the outside there, making sure that he doesn't scupper anybody else's lap, as his lap went a bit wrong and he's decided to tow. Well, what about in the interclass? Well, at the moment, it's Martin Kenyon in his Lamborghini Huracan Evo, who is the fastest of all of them, 13th, ahead of Robin Aston, who is only half a tenth behind him. But those two are significantly clear, with there being a further 2 tenths to Craig Hewlett, who is your third fastest, ahead of Robin Pownier. But they're all in the pit lane and out of their cars at the moment, so that's why we can't show you them. But Matthew Crofts had a bit of a nightmare moment, I think, coming out the final corner. He's decided to tow to the pits as we look to Ross Young with 3.5 minutes to go. And right now, time is definitely of the essence here for anybody who's looking to improve. But have we got any surprises currently? Well, the biggest surprise is that Peter Cox, he's into the grass there. That's on the exit of turn 3, going up into 4. He's had a spin. And for Cox, this might be a qualifying session where no lap is set. And if so, well, that's going to be a very slow start to his season. He's going to have a lot of work, the pro drive, so he'll be starting from the very back. Leo Mink, meanwhile, speaking of towards the back, he's your driver with the lowest time at the moment. And that is valid, down in 45th place. But we must say welcome to Leo. He is new to the grid. And I can tell you one thing, when it comes to newcomers, I have not for some time seen a newcomer in the official Discord, which is where we manage all the entrance rules, regulations, and all the chat between the drivers. I've never seen a newcomer so eager to get on the grid, to the point that he's been asking 101 questions to the admins. And, well, we haven't minded responding to him because it's the enthusiasm that matters. He's a bit enthusiastic there with the throttle pedal coming out of turn number 6. But to be fair, that's why he's in your interclass. He's looking to learn as he goes, and he'll learn from that one surely as he toes the pit lane. But good luck to Leo on his debut today. We look forward to seeing what he can do. We also do have Shane Connor here. He's back once again. He's in the Acura NSX Evo this time as Leo Mink cuts across the pit exit line there. Something tells me that might be a call back to the pit lane for him, and he'll have to speak to the automatic stewards about that one. But as Connor makes his way on down here, where he's decided to go over to this car from the Ferrari of the previous season. And, well, we do know the Acura is a very delicate car in its current state, whereby it's a very quick car, but it requires you to drive it within a very specific set of boundary conditions, overheat the tyres, and suddenly the rear of that car is going to let go very quickly. Alternatively, overheat the front, and that car will refuse to turn in. And it's also definitely got a very, very strong capacity for fuel saving if needed, but it's all going to come down to whether he can make it work as he slides loose there at turn number 8. And, well, for Shane Connor, that might be his qualifying session done and dusted. And shout out to him there. I do believe he's running a tribute livery to the Raybrigg NSX GT500 team in the JGTC, or now known as Super GT in the modern era. And, well, if that's by coincidence, well, it's a good coincidence. But meanwhile, looking to Bruno Botica as he comes out of the final corner. Well, he's got a minute left to go here. And he's currently one of your lowest placed pro drivers in the starting order, but you can always expect that. And for the uninitiated, in terms of the classes, how do they all fit together, I hear you ask? Well, of course, all drivers will race in their own class for this season, so you only score points based on where you finish compared to your peers. So if you win the race in the pro class, you get the maximum points for the round. However, when you queue up on the grid, you can see how they all are in the timing table on your left-hand side. That's all your top 40. That's how they line up. We don't suddenly take all the elites and put them at the front of the field and then put the pros behind them and the inters behind. No, you have to out-qualify everybody you can, and that's where you start on the grid. And in the race, you've got to make the decision calls. Do you fight with drivers of another class to try and act as a buffer to what would be your peers behind, or do you let them go and do what many would say is the smart thing? Indeed, that's what happens when you have multiple driver class racing and all the points are scored based on class position alone. You've got to really be thinking about the bigger picture when you go racing. But speaking of the bigger picture right now, as he heads onto his final qualifying lap, William Arnesen goes on the attack, and meanwhile Max Wheeler's going to come across the line right at the last moment. So as he does so, he calls on down there, and he's very happy with that lap by looks of things. He parks it up. But as he does so, Andrea Miato heads into the pit lane, and Miato right now makes his way on down, and I think he's very happy with that fourth place right at the death of the session as he crosses that timeline. But William Arnesen, meanwhile, well, he's still out there. He's currently the fastest on that 18.109. But what can Arnesen do here now as he heads on through? Does he need to do anything more? Something tells me the answer is probably no. However, I don't think he's got the memo on that one. The checker flag is out in this session. Henrik Zilker's crawling on round. I think he's had an off track at turn number 12, so therefore he recovers. No, and he can't improve any further. Naim Mayer here is heading on through, and he's looking quite quick on this lap as he heads in towards the final corner. And was the 169 driver heads out the left-hander. Well, right now, your pro driver, can he make his way further up the field for 25th? And the answer is going to be yes. It's 21st there, and 7th in the pro class for Naim Mayer. Good effort there right at the end. Meanwhile, we have had Shane Cotton come across the line. He's not improved. Gilles Lequy is coming across the line shortly, albeit I think he's gone a bit wrong there at the final corner. In fact, he's bobbing and weaving across the line. That tells me he's not happy at the end of that lap, and I think that's the way it's going to go. And as Hendrik Zilke calls falls and down. Well, overall an elite, subject to confirmation from iRacing, it is William Arnesen who takes the maiden pole position of the season by 18,000 over Reece Saunders, and that's elite and overall. On 9th in the grid will be none other than your pro pole sitter of Kyle Roy, who outpaced Henrik Zilkrinen, who will be starting 12th behind him. And in the interclass, 13th on the overall grid. But pole position is going to go to Martin Kenyon, just ahead of Robin Aston, who will start 15th. Well, that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we take a look to the scenic view. And what awaits us is, of course, a 5-minute warm-up session just before we go green flag racing. So as our drivers make their way into the warm-up session, they've now got a little bit of time just to get themselves comfortable and get themselves mentally set before we do go racing for the first time in anger. Now, of course, this 5-minute warm-up session gives them plenty of opportunities to A, potentially go take a bit of a comfort break, B, go top up on some water, which I definitely recommend you guys and girls at home do so. We've got plenty of water in the commentary booth. I've just double checked my glass there. It's just enough, I think, for the whole race distance, and if not, well, oh dear me. But definitely right now you've got an opportunity to go to the bathroom quickly, go get yourself some popcorn potentially, or your preferred snack of choice, because once we get racing, it's definitely going to be absolute cinema, and well, you won't miss our 60 minutes of season opening action. But some drivers, meanwhile, well, they're very eager just to get back out there and continue their practice and continue to get themselves, as we say, warmed up as we look to Henrik Strand and the BetaFrost car. And don't worry about the car image at the bottom centre of your screen there. It's showing an old livery that was loaded earlier on. This is the correct livery for our BetaFrost driver. And my goodness, is that a beautiful livery on the car there. And, well, right now, the 221 from Norway. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If BetaFrost don't win this season, they're definitely one of the contenders for the winning livery of the season when it comes to elite class, because it is absolutely beautiful. But for the uninitiated as well, with our free classes, how do you tell who's in which class? Well, you've got multiple means of doing so. Firstly, when you look to the time tower, you'll notice that our elites have a red stripe against their name, such as this man, Harvey Wheeler. Also, you do have the green stripes for the pros and the blue stripes for the inter-drivers. Alternatively, should you desire it, you also have the ability to tell based on the door numbers of the cars, whereby those with what is the door numbers above, well, from 200 to 299, they are your elite drivers. Those who are in the pro class, they go from 100 to 199, such as Steve Hobbs in the Sim Coach Ferrari, and those with door numbers of 1 through to 99, you guessed it, are the inter-drivers. But as all the drivers score the round around, we do look further back to Alexander Vinmark, who takes us around for a flying lap of the circuit in the warm-up session. So the BetaFrost driver makes his way into the braking zone for turn number 1, coming all the way into that braking zone, rolling the car and down here through the opening corner, and now over to the outside for turn number 2. It's a long left-hander here, but you've got to be very careful on the throttle as you descend down into turn number 3. And he goes deep initially. That's by design, because now he comes back to turn number 4. And as he hits the second apex, it's now coming up into turn number 5, the long left-hander. And it completes the first half of the lap as he now goes out nice and deep into turn number 6, but in fact goes a bit too deep. I think Mark now comes down to turn number 7, and this is where the lap now really speeds up quickly. Through that fast sweeping left-hander he goes and holding 4th gear, and now getting ready for turn number 8 here as he sweeps away into left-hander, lift the throttle, drop a gear from 5th to 4th, and well, cold tyres, I mean he can't attack it full, as he now comes over the crest there of 9 into 10, which will be flat out under race conditions once they've got full tyre temperature, and now down into 11 here as Vingmark keeps it nice and tight so the car doesn't understeer wide, and makes its way down in towards turn number 12. Here on the brakes at approximately 100 metres from corner entry point, and we'll just quick trail brake off there from 5th to 3rd as he now gets back on the throttle. Car re-emerging in front of him, that's going to be Leo Mink, and Vingmark brakes a little bit early there out of respect, but that's turn number 13. You can see how it transitions from a cambered corner to off camber by the time he gets to the apex, and that's a quick lap of the Sachsenring circuit there from Alexander Vingmark. May not have been a perfect lap to be fair, but just gives you an idea of how quick this lap comes upon us, and indeed the fact that over 2.26 miles we are going to be getting plenty of laps here over the best part of 60 minutes of racing. As he makes his way down for another lap with a queue of cars now building behind him. We do see there what is the machinery of one of the UK SimRacing cars, and another one further afield, as that was Salvatore Ferradino in the barrier there coming out to turn number 7. I'm not quite sure how he managed to achieve that, but he's recovering from it now. Here's Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Manish heading on through, and I do believe as well we do have another UKSimRacing team out there looking to impress today, and well, in terms of who they are representing, we will try to show you them shortly if we can. Well, I believe there's Neville Harris heading on around, and here's Peter Cox and the UKSimRacing Herbert driver. The other team is Herbert. I was going to say it was Norris, but I'm getting them confused with the Thursday series. But indeed, the UKSimRacing outfits dedicating themselves to Alan McNish, and also none other than your racing driver, always known, of course, for his escapades in the Ford Cosworth machinery, if I remember my teams correctly. And as Peter Cox there steps aside, well, he's representing Johnny Herbert there, albeit very good on the circuit, perhaps controversial, a bit less so in the stewarding room, depending on who you ask, but still, that's politics and modern Formula 1 for you, and we're not here to debate those today. But going away from our debate of politics, there's one thing you can't debate, ladies and gentlemen, no matter how much you try to spin it, and that is this warm-up session in 3, 2, 1 is done. It is time to head to the grid then for our season opening race here at the Sachsenring in Germany. So as all of our drivers make their way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our season opener of round 1 of season 17 of the SimRacing International Sunday GT3 Championship as part of the UK SimRacing bracket. William Arnesen takes pole position for what is BetaFrost. Maiden pole there by 18 thousandths over Altitude 3M Esports' Riise Saunders. Then on row number 2, it is going to be Henrik Strand, who starts third for BetaFrost, head of Tartan Restech's Andrea Miato. The Italian driver impressing later on the qualifying session ahead of Hayden Miller for Phoenix Racing Blue, and Freewheeler Racing by Phoenix's Max Wheeler joins him on row number 3. It's then going to be Harvey Wheeler who starts the day in 7th for Freewheeler Racing by Phoenix, ahead of none other than Jakob Stofko, who starts in 8th for Miracle Group M Esports. Expect him to charge fast as the race goes on, much like what we saw at Adelaide. Behind the Canadian driver, it'll then be your pro pole sitter of Kyle Roy for Miracle Group M Academy, ahead of Salvatore Ferradino, who completes your top 10 for Tartan Restech. Outside the top 10, starting on 11th, it is going to be Pietro Antonio Pasquarello, and that is going to be Tartan Restech's number 223 driver in the best of rest spot, ahead of Hendrik Silka, who starts in 2nd place in the pro class for Old Duty Cars. Then 13th is going to be your Interpol sitter of Martin Kenyon for DXT Motorsports, ahead of Casper Brotner for Old Duty Cars, with Robin Aston beginning the day 2nd of your Inter drivers in 15th place for GPX SimSport Onyx. Ross Young begins this one at 16th for DXT Motorsports, ahead of his his pro pairing behind of Axis SimSport Zed's Matthew Croft, and none other Connor Bros is Sean Connor. And then completing your top 20, it'll be Craig Hewlett for Axis SimSport Y and Axis SimSport Z, his sister teammate of Ashley Brooks. Outside that top 20, 21st is going to be Naim Mayer for Tartan Restech, ahead of Sim Coach's Robin Pownier. Steve Hobbs begins this one in 23rd for Sim Coach, ahead of Altitude 3M Esports' Tim Perry, who struggled in qualifying. That's not where he wanted to start today, that's certain, but he'll be ahead of Grant Miller, who starts 25th for a respectable qualifying session. The Phoenix Racing Red Trial then have Freewheeler Racing by Phoenix. Tom Wheeler begins the day in 26th, ahead of Darren Sharples for Old Duty Cars, and Andrew Montine starts 28th there for Axis SimSport Z. Behind the Romanian driver, it will then be Nathan Anstis for UKSimRacing Manish, ahead of the privateer of Bruno Patica from Portugal. That's your top 30. And outside the top 30 is Javi Sierra, who starts 31st, ahead of none other than Nick Parks, with Sierra struggling in qualifying, much like Perry. Parks starts 32nd, ahead of Shane Cotton and Alexander Vingmark, with, well, in fact, that's not Vingmark there, that is Richard Jones, the Sun Steady Racing driver. And then it's going to be Neville Harris starting 35th, ahead of Alexander Vingmark. Let's get them in the right order. The BetaFrost driver there, ahead of Sun Steady Racing's Alex Brown and Thomas Bargett, the privateer. And completing your top 40, it is Daniel Pays for Old Duty Cars, ahead of none other than Shane Connor. The Connor Bros Acura driver then be followed up by Gilles Lecky, the Canadian, who makes his debut 41st, ahead of Andrew Fellows for GPX SimSport Xenon. And then we do have Adam Hedgecock starting 43rd for Altitude 3M Esports. The Altitude team really struggling in qualifying today for most of their drivers, with Rob Windsor joining him on the 22nd row of the grid for UKSimRacing Manish. And then it's going to be Leo Mink, who starts 45th for 9 Pegasus Pantera Racing, ahead of Peter Cox for UKSimRacing Herbert, who didn't get a valid lap on the board, nor was it a valid lap for David Young for Logistical Nightmare Racing, nor for Axis SimSport Y's Noel Noah Blackwell. Well, that is the grid, ladies and gentlemen, and we are not too far away from going green flag racing as the pace car gradually takes us around. But as you'll see very shortly, we are only a corner away from going green flag. And when we do, it'll be to this man, William Arnesen, to take us to the green for 60 minutes of racing action here in Germany. And it's lights down, away we go for our season opening race, season 17 of the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship. And William Arnesen gets a good start, but behind Henrik Strand has to go defence immediately. Riise Saunders looking to battle around the outside as they roar and romp the one down. But as they do, these drivers right now absolutely full attack, as much you like, as they make the way into the braking zones. But as they do, plenty of fighting right at the front of the field. And meanwhile, further behind, well, Kyle Roy doing well to hold position. Most drivers already safely through the opening couple of quarters. Nobody seems to have made any early mistakes here, which is absolutely brilliant to see. Now coming up the rise through what will be turns 4, 5 and 6. We're looking further down. Tom Wheeler finding himself right in the fight there with Tim Perry, as Perry tries to clear his way past the three-wheeler raced by Phoenix Machine, but can't quite do so. Nathan Anstis a bit further back, being offline side by side here with Nick Parks, as Parks trying to take the place off him there in the blue and black Ford Mustang. But the Porsche is going to have the grip on the outside here. Will Parks back out of it? Surely he's got to. That's going to be an incredibly tight line otherwise, and Anstis in the end finds his way just around, but they're still too wide as they get ready for turns 9 and 10. Somebody's going to have to give way surely in the end, and Anstis is going to run out very wide there. That's going to be a slowdown for him that he's going to have to serve immediately. But meanwhile, as our leaders already come out to turn number 12, that's how quick they're going. Arnesen and Strand have already opened up a lead, and Hayden Miller right now is putting the cork in the proverbial bottle further back as Riise Saunders fights hard with Jakub Stofko. Remember, I said watch out for him, he's such a quick charger, and Stofko is already up from 8th to 5th, and the Miracle Driver is on the attack. Kyle Roy as well is right there, but as they charged away onto lap number 2, well, the two Corvettes of Wheeler and Roy are side by side, albeit it's going to be Wheeler going around the outside and trying to nip also Riise Saunders there as Roy gets boxed in behind Saunders, and Wheeler goes defensive. Robin Aston, meanwhile, he's taken the lead of what is your interclass. That's a change that we haven't quite seen how it started on camera, but we've seen the outcome of it. And meanwhile, your pole sitter in the interclass of none other than Martin Kenyon, he's fallen down for DXT Motorsports all the way to 23rd. So he has not had a happy start to this race as Martin Kenyon, but I think there's a bit of a story to explain that, as all the drivers right now start to separate out a little bit, and this race now really starts to get into what will be the long distance. But his name, Mayer, he holds on to 7th right now versus Steve Hobbs just up the road from him in the Pro class. His focus is going to be more on the fact that he's got the challenge ahead of him of what will be trying to catch up to Hobbs, but the pressure of Tim Perry behind with the elite driver looking for an opportunity to get past him where he can. Further back, there's a bit of crowding here as the old Duty Cars pair of Sharples and Batika, they fight over 9th place in the Pro class, but they're causing a queue, a load of interdrivers. That's Tom Wheeler running wide at turn number 10, gets himself back together, but Andrew Mateen squeezes on past there, and the Axis Sim Sport driver in the McLaren makes his way forwards, and Nick Park dives up the inside. Lovely move there for the privateer, catching Tom Wheeler completely by surprise. Wheeler in the end opened up the door at the last possible minute, but sometimes you've got to be an opportunist, and Nick Park's definitely that, the Briton, as he makes his way to the end of this lap, and Javi Sierra would like an opportunity to get involved if he can. Further back, Leo Mink battling here with Gilles Lequy. These two are the last year runners, and they both get it a little bit wrong there coming out of turn number 12. I think both drivers were going wide, but in the end, whilst Lequy was getting the car back up to speed, I think Leo Mink in the end making that contact, but he comes into the pit, I think, with some damage as a result of that. That's unfortunate for the 22 driver, and his race may have gone backwards before he's really been able to get it going forwards. But meanwhile, onto lap number 3 we go, and a few run wides there. Riise Saunders taking a wide trip. I think a lot of our drivers here right now trying to push to the limit and find out that dirty air is never going to go away. And in terms of our conditions for today, well, we do have currently an ambient of 20 degrees centigrade and a track temperature of 40 degrees centigrade. So that's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable out there, that track temperature, because it will mean the tyres are going to get blisteringly hot quite quickly. And this could be a race whereby actually turning down your pace by about 10 to 15% could actually benefit you in the long run, because you won't take the life out of the tyres. Keep in mind, of course, when our drivers do come into the pits for their mandatory pit stop for fuel, changing tyres is entirely optional. They do have the option to change as many tyres as they want, but normally the fuel that goes in, you only have time to change 1 or 2 tyres because they're done simultaneously with the fuel, or then you're adding on your pit stop time for taking any more. So that's going to be interesting there. Do drivers change their tyres, or do they stay on the compound they've rubbered in over the distance and accept the fact it's less than optimal? Well, we'll have to see, as Robin Aston right now is very much in control of the early stage of this interclass. The GPX Simsport Onyx driver having the best part of 3 seconds between himself and Craig Hewlett for Axis Simsport Y, as he in turn has broke away from this very long queue of cars, of which Sean Connor really is the man at the front of it, missing a front bumper by the looks of things. I don't know how he's managed to achieve that, Sean Connor. We might be able to get a replay to explain shortly, because it has been a very clean start to the race, albeit there's been a few altercations and scuffles. But otherwise, nobody's really had a big error as such, although saying that, I think we have had one driver's had a bit of difficulty. Shane Connor was at the epicentre of some madness on lap number 2, but otherwise, for the most part, everybody has had a solid start to this one, and that's absolutely wonderful to see. But as they all get it together, let's take a look back in time then at some of the moments on the start of the race, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly from that race start perspective, and what exactly happened to our pole sitter in the interclass of none other than what was Martin Kenyon. So this was the on-board from Martin Kenyon's perspective when he went green flag racing. So he got himself up to speed, and what exactly happened? He made his way down in towards turn 1. Decent start here, and then naturally the concertina effect. But he took it nice and easy into the braking zone, made sure not to fight too aggressively, made his way down and around, and then came into turn number 2. Well, there's no real pinch here to begin with, so what exactly went wrong for Martin Kenyon? That's the question we're trying to answer. And well, in the end, made his way down through turn 3 and 4. Lamborghini driver finding plenty of space, so it all went right initially. And then at some point, I think Robin Aston now started to look up his inside here into turn number 5, and I think this is where the changes started to come afoot, as he was a little bit wide, lost a lot of momentum. Ross Young was getting closer as well there. That was Young just getting ahead of him, so Aston was still behind. So I think for Kenyon, it must have happened a bit further down on the lap in terms of where he lost the places. But there was Robin Aston coming through, so he siphed his way in towards turns 8 and 9, and after that I think he just started to fall away little by little. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make our way back to your live pictures. So as we come on back, well, still more racing to come, no doubt about it, as all these drivers continue the way on. But for Martin Kenyon, definitely a bit of a slow start to his race. And, well, we'll get some replays of what happened to other drivers in short order, as Naim Mayer right now finds himself right in the thick of the fighting with Robin Powney and Sean Connor. And, well, we do have to understand exactly what happened to Sean Connor's car, given the fact it is missing a front bumper, and somehow that's managed to happen. Sure how that's happened, to be fair. Do we have a replay to explain that? We will see in due course. I think there's just probably been a tap between the two of them. Otherwise, they all carry on. And as they make their way 3 wide behind down in towards turn number 1, Tim Perry there, still eager to try and make an impression, but it's not working out at the moment. And instead, he's waiting for that opportunity to get back into the fight if he can. Rolling the way down through the corners at the moment. All these drivers definitely, I think, at this time at least, enjoying themselves, but knowing it is proving just a little bit challenging, as at the very front of the field, William Arnesen still ahead of Henrik Riise Strand. The 2 BetaFrost drivers here, they are definitely marching away at the very front, and Hayden Miller behind. Well, the 3rd place runner for Phoenix Racing Blue is still there, but he's got to try and play catch-up. And in fact, I've just had it said in my ear, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we saw a lot of difficulty for Martin Kenyon right at the start of the race, I do believe is because he was having some connectivity issues, and he actually backed off slightly because of the issues in order to make sure he was not in anybody's way for the opening couple of laps, and that's why he's lost the places. So he's going to be on a bit of a recovery drive now, but he's played it safe, as Miguel Casper Brotten there cannot afford to play it too safe, as he tucks up the inside of Ross Young. But that explains why we've lost our leader in the interclass down the order, but he's going to be on the charge, as in fact Grant Miller gets up the inside of him, and Kenyon falls even further down as his Lamborghini, it's Audi engine, and it's definitely been bullied down the order a little bit here as they all scramble onwards. But it's definitely a big fight going on between Miller, Kenyon, Sharples, Batika and Muntean as they all make their way into the braking zone for turn 1. But Grant Miller is very gradually moving forward, as that was a run wide there for none other and then the car that's going a lap down of Andrew Fellows shortly, as Fellows in the end steps aside in the very colourful Porsche on the outside of turn number 3, and I think there they decided to have a little bit of everything when it came to the RGB spectrum of the car, although I'm not saying it's a bad delivery, in fact it's nice. Andrew Fellows right now, for all the colour he brings to the grid, unfortunately the GPX Simsport Xenon driver is not bringing places on forward here, and therefore he's got to try and just hold on and see if some places come back to him later on in the race, because being the lap down this early and so far down the order is not going to help him, and that's sadly an instant we can't get a replay of. Indeed, we missed a couple of items that happened at the start on replays, but still more to come. As we see a move there by Robin Aston up the inside of none other than him was Matthew Croft. So Croft actually moving up to 14th place overall, and the interleader letting go to the 4th place driver in the Pro class. But Craig Hewlett, meanwhile, well, the Access and Sport Y driver taking a bit of inspiration from his teammate of Croft. I think right now is on a mission to try and play catch-up if he can. He's getting closer as they head in towards turn number 1. And can Hewlett go on the attack? Remember, it's Porsche on Porsche here, so two very equal machines. It's all going to come down to car setup and the driver. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Max Wheeler, well, he was involved in a bit of an altercation that sent him a long way down the order since the start. And in fact, I believe we have a bit of a replay to explain, because Max Wheeler has fallen dramatically so, down to 25th from a 6th place start. How did he end up getting there? Here's a replay to explain. So this replay courtesy of Arturo Mayorga, and as we did see Wheeler make his way through the corner, the Audi just bit back a little bit. Oh my good lord, and that was some good evasive action there, being taken by Casper Brotner, who went onto the gravel and powered through it. But in the end, Wheeler just tripping out wide, and because of the fact the rear of the car bounced loose, coming up through turn number 8 into 9. The Audi has a reputation for that, and well, as we make our way back to your live circuit side pictures, Max Wheeler, that's how he got all the way down the order. But as we come on back, well, whilst it's been difficulties for Wheeler, it's still successes for others, and still plenty of drivers out there right now trying to make a bit more progress. Sean Connor, well, we don't know how he lost that front bump on that McLaren. We believe it might have been the concertina effect into the opening few corners in the opening lap, but he's showing no signs of being wounded too heavily by it. Although I say that, Name Mayer is going to be looking around the outside shortly to try and take this 5th place in class off of him, as we do look to those class standings. And Mayer right now, it's bold, it's brave, but can he make it happen? The answer is no. Connor there just simply keeps himself in the middle of the road and says to Name, well, you might be able to go for it, but this is not going to work at all, as Perry and Hobbs queue up behind. Indeed, it is a long queue of cars that is forming here. And in fact, you have 17th all the way through to 31st place in this long line of cars at the moment. And the wounded McLaren of Sean Connor is definitely creating a bit of a train here. I'm not going to say he's creating our equivalent of the Trudy train from Formula 1, but he's definitely getting into that territory. As Connor right now has Mayer getting closer and closer as we look back from the rear of the 5th place pro driver. And the 155, I don't think he realises he's causing such a traffic jam right now. Not as a problem as Perry there slides loose coming out through turn number 10. And well, that's an easy mistake to make. That's because of the dirty air. But here comes Mayer looking around the outside again. Can he get it this time as it's free wide to the rear of the picture? Mayer's going to try and go round the outside. This may be it. He may finally clear the speed bump in the road that has been Sean Connor for some time. But Connor's not giving up yet. He refuses to budge here. And as they come up through the hill right now, well, my goodness, this battle, it's only going to build more and more here. And the pressure is going to build to the point where it's going to be absolutely untenable. You can see Mayer there flashing his headlights. That's to distract, because right now it's all fair racing between them. Steve Hobbs and the sim coach Ferrari, meanwhile, he now tries to go around the outside, trying to do what Mayer couldn't do on the previous lap, and it doesn't work out either for Hobbs, as he did get ahead of Perry with Perry's big slide. But goodness me, this fight right now, where it's definitely splitting the field into two major parts, but right now everyone queuing up behind Sean Connor, who is just holding on. And well, I wouldn't be surprised if Connor potentially comes into the pit lane as soon as he possibly can, just to relieve the pressure from himself, but also to get a new front bumper put back on the car, because I would imagine that is not helping the car on the straights in particular, because the amount of aerodynamic drag it's inducing. But still, for all that, through the corners he still looks composed. As Mayer looking around the outside there on the run out of turn number 7. That's bold from Mayer, but it's worked because it's given him the switchback coming in towards 9 and 10. And the Tartan Restec driver from Switzerland right now is absolutely pushing this to the limit. I don't think he's got anything more to give at this point. He's using all the road, he's using all the tricks in the book, and now Steve Hobbs is going to try and pull one of them instead. But he's not going to let that go as Darren Sharples looks up the inside there. Tim Perry, a bit of forward action as they come through 12 and in towards 13. Some gravel being kicked up by multiple drivers, and as they all head onto the brakes, it's going to be Sharples still there with Robin Powney looking on behind. But what's also interesting is the fact you have 3rd through to 8th in the interclass into this long queue of cars right now, and it really is getting to the point where I think so many drivers are now got to be thinking about strategy here and how they can get past it sooner rather than later. But further back, we did see a big move there from Max Wheeler in his Audi, trying to get up the inside of Bruno Batica. He couldn't quite do that. Instead, he has to wait his turn. But my good lord, it is such a long line of cars, and anyone who's ahead of it right now is going to be smiling at the fact they're gaining time. Meanwhile, Casper Brotner's just lost out a little bit of time as he falls into 11th place. I think he just had a slight error off the circuit, and Henrik Silke is right behind him there. So the two teammates together, and well, Brotner is your 10th place elite driver at this time, down in 11th. Kyle Roy is just up the road. He's your leader in pro, as that's Leo Mink, who's had a spin coming out of turn number 11. He recovers it well, though, and recovers it quickly. So well done to him, but he will go a lap down to everybody, as we've got a bit of change afoot here towards the front. Harvey Wheeler up the inside of Reece Saunders. That is for 6th in elite class. Right now, well, will it still hold? I don't think it will, as Wheeler going all the way to the pit wall there. That is definitely to chase the toe of Stofko, but also I think he may have picked up a slowdown for some reason, because he's immediately backed off there into the braking zone for turn number 1. I wonder if he's made that overtake off track potentially, and Saunders has taken it back there, and Wheeler's made it as clear as humanly possible that he doesn't want to get in the way. But meanwhile, Name Mayer has fallen to Steve Hobbs in the long queue, the Connor queue, if you will, and as they come down towards turn 1 this time, well, 15 minutes is complete. Into the pit lane has come Martin Kenyon. I think he's read the writing on the wall, has Kenyon, and I think he's decided, you know what, it's time for me to pit and get out of this queue, because this queue right now is absolutely swallowing up so many drivers as we look to your overall standings, and anybody who's running in this, well, they can all fuel save, but they are losing so much race time. And the fact that Nathan Anstis has caught onto the back of this, Alexander Wingmark is 7 seconds back, but he's closed onto the back of this at a rate of 1.5 seconds a lap. Well, right now, anybody below what is 16th place is going to be absorbed into this, and strategy is going to be so important, and that's why Kenyon's come in order to jump it by taking an undercut strategy, and I wonder if we'll see any reactions. Meanwhile, we do look here to Pietro Antonio Pasquarello, the Italian driver, making his way in towards turn 13. And the Tartan ResTech driver under pressure on Kyle Roy. He's trying to stay with his teammate Salvatore Ferradino, but right now Ferradino is gradually gapping him in his own Lamborghini Huracan. So Pasquarello here might just be simply acting as a bit of a rear guard, as Roy will look to the outside. And Kyle Roy right now knowing he needs to try and put every elite driver he can between himself and Zilka, who's never too far behind. But Roy, Zilka and then Croft are your top 3 of that pro class. And here's Matthew Croft right now bringing along Ross Young with him. So therefore, your top 3 in pro, they've all got pressure of their own on each head. And as we do see Ross Young trying to keep close, Craig Hewlett is the man at the back of this group. And the Assistance Sport Wire driver is definitely enjoying a very good run here as Hewlett heads onwards. But he did make his way past Robin Aston only a couple of laps to go for what was the lead of the interclass. But how exactly did he get it done? Here's a replay to explain. So this was the lead of the elite class, and into the final corner they came at the end of lap number 10. And Aston went a bit too deep into the corner, and as a result, the rear of the car kicked around as he tried to get the throttle down. Easy mistake to make, but for Robin Aston, a frustrating one. And Craig Hewlett picked up the place as quickly as that. As Aston had to get himself turned back around, he eventually did so and made his way onwards. But unfortunately, he was swallowed up by the long queue of cars here. And Robin Aston has now found his race pinned back by the Connor train. So without further ado, it's back to your live race and we go, ladies and gentlemen. But as we come back to it, there's still more to come here, and anybody right now who opts to make a bit of a jump in that queue is definitely going to come out on top, or so it seems. It's now 2 by 2 here in the battle between Pioneer and Aston for second place in the interclass. It's the battle of the Robins, and right now who's going to be leading it as they come in towards turn 1? Well, right now neither. They're both side by side with Wheeler and Batica queuing up behind, and then Miller and Montine there, and there are another 2 into drivers who are trying to get involved. But Aston right now defends hard as it comes down through 1 into 2. They're still 2 wide here all the way through into 3. And Aston on the outside to inside line surely will have this at least for the time being. As Pioneer's going to try and go around the outside, but there's going to be no room for him. Not any rotation in the car at that point onwards. Meanwhile, Grant Miller and Andrew Montine, they queue up behind with Tom Wheeler and Nick Parks there. Miller right now holding on to 4th place in the Interclass 9. That podium is definitely within his reach if he can clear Batica and Wheeler in front, or they can clear the 2 Inters in front of them. It's going to go one way or the other, surely. And Andrew Montine just sitting in the back of this group right now. It's absolutely brilliant as we look to ride on board here with Nick Parks. Now, Parks, in fact, over the course of this lap has fallen back a little bit, but understandably, I wouldn't be surprised here if this is to try and give himself a bit more visibility and also give him a bit more strategic choice, because being further back, he'll be able to see who potentially comes in at a certain point in time. He won't essentially be so glued to the car in front of him that he won't be able to have visibility of the 2 or 3 in front, as that's still a fight. And therefore, will be Miller and Montine coming out of the corner. And as they make the way over the crest, right now, Park's battling with a little bit of power oversteer there. It's easy to do in that Ford Mustang with V8 5-litre engine. Right, here we are then, Miller versus Montine. It's going to be Montine looking on the inside in the battle of the 2 McLarens. Miller goes to the outside, goes a bit too deep, keeps 2 wheels just within the limits. He picks up a lot of marbles for it, but Grant Miller in the end, if he went any deeper than that, he would have been in the gravel. But as they come down in towards turn number 3, it is going to be Andrew Montine who makes that move stick, and Miller in the end just running slightly out there. But to be fair, he wanted to outbrake, he wanted to hold the position, but his enthusiasm to battle in the end has come back to haunt him just for now. But he'll be able to try and get that place back in due order, because I don't think Montine's going to be going anywhere quickly. That's not because he's not trying, it's just simply because right now the way this field is going, until somebody manages to find the way past Sean Connor, they are not progressing any further forward in this group, and Sean Connor still keeping everyone at bay. But to be fair, that is not to be rude about him, it's just how good a job he's doing as a driver. But as we then come back to Peter Cox, he's gradually making his way forward. He started in 46th place, he's up to 32nd, and he's moved from 15th to 10th in the pro class, and he's on the back of Shane Cotton and Alexander Vinmark. And Vinmark right now has got Cotton all over his backside like a bad rash as they make the way down. Cotton in the McLaren there, the black McLaren, looking for an opportunity on the BetaFrost Porsche. Peter Cox dives up the inside of both of them there, and they swarm around the outside of Alexander Vinmark. It's the reverse Moses manoeuvre in the end, but it doesn't quite work out for Cotton. He runs a little bit deep. Vinmark tries to come back at Cox as well and says 2 can play that game, but Peter Cox at the end, he saw the door was wide open and took both of them there, the UKSimRacing Herbert driver, and using that pro experience and knowledge to his advantage. But it's not over yet, as Vinmark and Cotton now cross the timeline here, and Will Cotton's looking around the outside now. Vinmark goes defensive. Can Cotton make the move happen? I don't think so here, as we ride on board the dashboard of Vinmark for a brief moment. There you can see Cox already starting to bolt away. Behind him was a big rear wing, but then you can see the McLaren of what is Shane Cotton just staying close here. And 2 very potent cars that gain a lot of speed in the corners. The McLaren has a bit more in the straights typically by comparison with the cornering capabilities of the Porsche. But as they make the way through turns 5, 6 and 7, right now Vinmark hold on to 7th place in the interclass and having an absolute whale of time doing so, as that's the car out wide there. That's Rob Windsor obeying blue flags and stepping aside, albeit bringing some gravel onto the circuit with him when he does so. Oh my goodness, as this race continues to heat up, ladies and gentlemen, we have still got a long way to go. Indeed, we've only cleared the best part of 20 minutes, and already we've seen some absolutely brilliant moments. And meanwhile, we'll come back to Grant Miller versus Andrew Montine. It is round number 2 of their match, and Miller right now on the insider takes the place back from 12 to 13 in terms of the corners, and Montine backing off gladly there to get a run down towards turn number 1. But can somebody find their way past Sean Connor? It's a look around the outside there by Naeem Mayer. He's still trying. The gap to Craig Hewlett, by the way, is now 18 seconds. Yes, you heard that correctly. Craig Hewlett at this point, a lot of drivers are going to have a pit stop gap at this rate. In terms of that top 10 in particular, such is the pace at which this whole train of cars is headed around right now. But Sean Connor's not doing anything illegal, to be fair. Let's be clear on this. He is just holding his ground in a McLaren that definitely is not in the best of health compared to his rivals, but nobody can find a way past, because on the straight is where he's struggling, but in the corners he's got it off. But Mayer's looking up the inside this time. Surely the Aston Martin driver's going to go for it. He's not going to back off, and Ian goes up the inside, and Connor can't fight it. Meanwhile, Sharples round. Sharples loses the rear of the car. They come through turn number 8, but gets it together quickly and off the road. But Mayer has cleared Connor. He's made it happen. It's only taken the best part of what has been about 7 to 8 laps to do so, but finally somebody has been able to get through. But Connor immediately dives back to the inside there into turn number 12. The Connor Bros driver right now really festering for an opportunity to come back. As many run wide there, the dirty air is definitely picking up apart. Oh no! That's Robin Powney into the wall. Powney's gone round. There's some contact there. The sim coach driver goes spinning, and in the end the car, well, it's lost its front bumper. Powney is surely going to be coming into the pits at this point. That's going to be damage. And into the pits as well comes Darren Sharples just in front of him. It's pandemonium, my good lord. But what a whole series of moments there. We're going to get some replays of those But absolute chaos there in this pack, and right now I think the little bit of red mist is descending on so many drivers here. I think they're all fed up of running so close together, and the thing is, understandably, when you run this close for so long, the drain it has on you as a driver is absolutely incredible, because you've not got to be thinking about your own braking zones and your own racing lines. You've got to be thinking about the concertina effect. You've got to be thinking about where you can get close to the car in front and where you have to back off, and it is so difficult. You can imagine it adds about 50% more of a tax onto you as a driver to run this close. Do it for a couple of laps, it's fine, you have the stamina to do it, but doing it for what is essentially a whole quarter, if not a third of the race, it is brutal on these drivers, and that is why you're now seeing things go slightly wrong, and suddenly it all just coming apart because of the fact they've been so locked into this for so long. I think right now we've still got over half the race to go, but to many of them they'll feel as though they've already done 3/4 of it, as that's going to be to the barrier there from Robin Aston. His race goes from good to bad to worse as the GPX since Onyx tries to come loose at turn number 12, and it's into the wall, and that's going to be a toe to the pits there. There's no way that car's getting going again, at least until it's had some repair work, but more fighting to come as Connor and Hobbs now sees that May has been able to get on through, and he's thinking to himself, right, why can't I get past as well? And the answer is because he needs to be closer under braking as they roar the way on down. But with all of this fighting going on, let's not forget the fact we've also got some battling building up here in the very front of the field, with Arnesen and Strand, your two leaders, having broken away to 5.5 seconds over Hayden Miller. And Miller right now, well, the third place man has Andrea Miato, who is right there with him. Miato has been there for some time, to be fair. The lap times between these two have been constantly exchanged back and forth. New fastest lap of the race, an 18.566 for William Arnesen. Meanwhile, Miller there lapping on a 1 minute 20.497, but they have had some traffic to negotiate, I do believe, as that is Shane Connor there, one of the members of the lap down cars. A biff on the backside there from Darren Sharples as he battles with Gilles Lequy. Lequy goes around the outside there, lovely move from Lequy to take 7th place in the interclass. Keep in mind that these drivers have yet to pit, but they are gradually falling down the order on the lap. So therefore, they are finding themselves intermingling with lead lap drivers here. This is not an easy place to be. Sharples right now has a problem because right behind him, that is Jakob Stofko, who is your lead lap driver, and the Canadian driver wants to get on through. But where can Sharples go at this point? He can't just chuck it to the gravel, because otherwise that's going to scupper his car and his strategy. But this is causing a bigger split inside the top 10 of the lead lap field right now. But everyone's been as respectful as they can. And, well, understandably, I think Stofko here is going to be looking for a move by the time they get to turn 12, if not before it, as both drivers they've run out wide. That's going to be an instant point to their names and potentially a slowdown coming their way. And, well, this is the problem. When you find that lap down traffic, you've now got to be very careful about it, because it can very easily go from good to bad to disaster if you don't pick your overtake point at the right time. And regards to our blue flags, these aren't 41 blue flags, but the driver's just expected to step aside as Reece Saunders there tries to go around the outside of Stofko. I mean, it's all for a switchback in the end as Saunders tucks into the pits. He, in the end, lures Stofko into thinking a battle's coming, but Saunders decides to throw the strategy card, and I think that's a good one because of the fact now he'll get himself out of that queue, but we wonder where it's going to put him in terms of the rest of the queue. Well, we will see as Matthew Croft and Hendrik Zilka make the way on to another lap. Saunders is getting ready to park up. Also into the pit lane there has come Craig Hewlett from the lead of the interclass. He's seen an opportunity. Ooh, hold up a second. That's a car parked there in the middle of the grass. That was the car, I think, of Gilles Lequy, who in the end has had a bit of an incident at turn number 1 into 2. So I'm not quite sure how he's got there, but it's gone a bit wrong. But with things going wrong and things going right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we need to take a look back at what exactly happened. Firstly, to Robin Powney in that big train and all that madness that unfolded only months ago. And without further ado, let's back in time and take a look. So this was just after Name Man had made his move on Sean Connor. So Powney on the outside there, battling side by side. The rear of the car slid loose. He tried to get it under control, made a bit of contact there with the Audi of none other than Max Wheeler. And then subsequently, well, there was also a bit of contact with Grant Miller. There was no malice in Miller's contact. It was just the domino effect there of Powney coming loose. So that explains what happened to him. A nightmare moment for him, and it all fell apart. But thankfully, a pit stop right there. We then had this only laps later for Robin Aston at the same corner where the car came loose on him. Took a lot of apex curb there, went out wide, and the rear right tyre just dipped into the gravel. And at that point, as he tried to get the power down, it was a bang to the wall. And unfortunately, bang, one and done for his race. We also had this for Gilles Lequy and Nick Parks only a couple of laps later. Well, this was Lequy on the outside, battling with none other than Shane Connor. And in the end, went to turn in, only to find Darren Sharples were there. Lecky was turned around. Oh no, and Nick Parkson in did not see the Porsche in time, and Lecky in the end having to get himself off the road. Unfortunate that one, and well, for the debutant, it's all gone a little bit wrong. But with that, back to your live racing. And as we come on back, well, we're in the throes of strategy here, ladies and gentlemen. So it is going to be at this point now all about where exactly does the driver come out once they've made their stop. Now, to put you in the frame, here is Sean Connor. He's currently 17th. He's the one driver you don't want to come out behind right now, until he's pitted at least, we should point out. We should really caveat that statement, because otherwise it sounds as though we're picking on the man. But the Connor Bros driver is continuing to form a long queue behind, but a lot of drivers have started to pit. Name Mayer has pitted. He's come back out in 27th place. He fights with Craig Hewlett, the man who was leading in the interclass at the time. So these two, they have come out around each other, which is perhaps what you would expect. However, I would say that with the way they're fighting right now, neither driver wants to give ground to the other. They both think they're the faster driver in this pairing, and I think one of them's going to have to give in shortly, as otherwise they're going to be losing so much time, and it's not going to be a happy story for them to tell for the remainder of the race if they lose out on an opportunity, particularly Hewlett, if he misses out on the win here because of fighting with the pro driver. We will see as they both ran wide, but they've both now settled their differences for a brief moment. But in terms of the driver who's pitted and is currently the leader of the stoppers, this is Rhys Saunders, who comes back out. He now moves up to 11th place as Salvatore Ferradino now makes his way along. And it does seem as though the Tartan ResTech team have split their strategies. As meanwhile, that's a big dive there from Bruno Batika up the inside of Sean Connor. Really elbowed his way out, and I think Connor there, being given the place back by Batika, sent it in, and in the end I realised he came in a bit too aggressively. But what it's done is Ferradino has brought his way into this, and well, I don't think he's going to be too happy at the moment, the fact that he's caught up right at the trade of cars. Tom Wheeler is one of them there right in front of him, who's now the current inter-leader, albeit keep in mind that Wheeler has yet to pit in that Ford Mustang for 3WR by Phoenix. So I would imagine that for Ferradino this is a nightmare situation, which is he's come out in amongst a whole host of cars that have yet to pit. They're all fighting each other overall and class position, and nobody's going to at any point really respect the fact that he's on a different strategy, as we've got multiple cars out wide, and that was Batika going out wide, and also there I believe none other than Gilles Lecky, both having a bit of a moment, and well, not a nice moment of that, but as they come along, well, Ferrandino is going to be grateful for the fact the pressure of Batika behind him has now gone away, but he still needs to clear Sean Connor and Tom Wheeler as quickly as he can, as Wheeler completely makes a ham sandwich there at the exit of turn number 12. So Ferrandino is going to make that place up, and with that, well, he's going to be breathing the biggest sigh of relief he's probably ever breathed in his sim racing career, because Ferrandino now has clear track in front of him with Sean Connor heading into the pit. So he's had to suffer for a lap, but now that the suffering's over, he can move forward. But how much time has it cost him? That is the big question. Meanwhile, off camera, we have had Pietronio Pasquarello right now get caught up to by Casper Brockner, who's been making some quick pace. And in fact, Brockner all over the back of him right now as they head in towards the next braking zone. Will Brockner look for the move here in towards turn number 12 before they come up behind the long queue of cars that's fighting in front of them? The answer is not quite so at the moment. All the cars in front have pitted, it should be pointed out, but they are effectively going to go to a lap down to these two who have yet to pit. So if you're Brockner or Pasquarello, will you decide that now is the time to come into the pits or not? Will they both stay out there? I think that might not be the best call strategy-wise, because now they're going to have to fight each other and fight through this. And well, that's not going to be easy, as you can see immediately there. Robin Powney steps steep, so does Grant Miller. They are all aware of the leaders coming on through, and they're trying to create a racing line for them, but it's much easier said than done, as Kyle Roy is doing the hard work there as your pro leader to give them the space, and Pasquarello has now got all in behind Shane Connor. And well, Connor here is not going to prove to be a nuisance, but remember, he doesn't just have to step aside. His role as the lap down car, or the car that's to go a lap down, is to help facilitate the pass when the pass is coming. And there it is, as it's going to be the Italian up the inside of the American driver. And well, in the end, Brockner takes all the speed from the corner. That's going to put him right behind Connor, and Shane Connor doesn't need to move aside right now as they make the way onwards. Casper Brockner here, he's timed this a bit poorly. It's going to cost him a lot, and it's going to cause Grant Miller to queue up very close behind him, as in the end Brockner has to run deep there because of Miller's presence, and coming through turn number 10 in towards 11. Right now, Grant Miller does not want to be held up here because Robin Powney is away with the back of his neck. And these drivers coming through turn number 12. Miller's going to go around the outside of Brotner there. He has to. It's the only place he can go to defend the position from Robin Paunier. So right now, Casper Brotner finds himself right in the midst of a battle. And you would think that he was the lap down car with the way they're battling around him, but not quite so. Into the pits, meanwhile, tucks Henrik Zilka. He's seen what's on the wall. And I think old dudes and cars have said, Henrik, you've got to come in for your teammate. It's all doom and gloom right now, but you can get ahead of this whilst you've got a chance. And right now, Casper Brotner has Grant Miller constantly siphoned at the inside of him. Indeed, it is role reversal here, but that's because Miller's so worried about Paunier, who's looking for the move. But as we jump on board with Robin Paunier, coming down and through the corners, looking around the outside, he's going to find Shane Connor there's gone very deep as well. But Miller, in the end, on that inside line, is able to get the better traction up the hill. And Paunier right now letting on past there what is the lead lap car of none other than Ross Young. So Paunier deciding, you know, it's not worth it anymore with Miller fighting so hard with Casper Brotner. And indeed, I think Brotner's going to be a bit frustrated at the fact that right now Miller's still there with him, but understandably so, because Miller does not want the man we're right on board with to get any closer. He wants to give these elite drivers a bit of a hurry-up call, and even the pros who are coming on through. As Paunier now waits his turn here, making his way on through in towards what is the more open section of the lap, and this is going to give them all a big breather of relief. Or potentially for Paunier and Young. Grant Miller still trying to make some headway just in front as we come from the onboard there and leave them be in the third person. From these drivers, we look to Hayden Miller, who's still fighting with Andrea Miato for that third place spot, the last spot on the elite and overall podium. 25 minutes still left to go, plus a pit stop for these drivers. Your leaders of William Arnesen and Henrik Riise Strand, they are 9 seconds ahead now, and it looks though BetaFrost may have a 1-2 very much heading towards them, and it's going to be a question of who's the third place man on the podium. At least at this time, Hayden Miller's doing a great job of holding on, but Miato is not falling away whatsoever with 25 left on the clock. On them, and what's expected to be even more fighting. Here's a change of position. Miller's just made his way around the outside there. Shane Connor. Connor's had a poor run out to turn 3 into 4, and Connor now has got a nasty bit of problem here, as that's going to be round in the rear of the picture. That's Nick Parks who's gone round, and in front that was the lead lap driver Ross Young, almost doing the same as him, but Parks in, I think, in the concertina coming through turn number 7. It's all gone wrong for the 35 driver, who was at the time on the back of this battle for 7th place in the interclass, but the 10th place inter driver now is going to fall a bit further back, at least for the time being. Thomas Barjuk's into the pit lane. And as he parks up then, his Ferrari 296, he'll be hoping that by going a bit longer and staying in the clear air, he's been able to avoid getting caught up in any of the madness. We will see whether that's so in a short degree. As meanwhile, we look to your top 2 overall, and Arnesen just made his way through the camera shot, but we're looking at Henrik Strand here for BetaFrost, as right now the 221 driver finds a bit more of the traffic. Indeed, they're having the unenviable task of trying to pick their way through it. This is always to be expected when you are on such a short circuit, that eventually you are going to have drivers who go a lap down, and this is also a test of the mettle of our elite drivers about how well they can negotiate the traffic of the less experienced drivers out there. Looking back to Craig Hewlett, your 4th place driver in the interclass. As we understand it, he is currently your highest placed inter driver who has pitted in this race. So Hewlett right now in serving that pit stop, the Access and Sport wide driver. He's caught behind Alexander Vingmark, who has yet to pit in inter. And Vingmark right now keeping it at bay for now, understandably so, because Vingmark doesn't want to lose Shane Cotton, who's 3 seconds up the road. But will we see Vingmark defect to the pits? Not this time out is the answer, but surely at some point he is going to do so. I think Vingmark right now is very happy with the pace of the race, and therefore is not wanting to disrupt it at all. Gilles Lequy looking up the inside of Andrew Fellows. Meanwhile, they are about to go a further lap down, but these two fighting hard, as a bit of contact there between the 12th and 13th place drivers in the interclass, but Lequy does get that done in the end, and well, it may not have been 100% perfect, but to be fair, the Canadian driver there does go for a good move. Fellows tucks in behind immediately, respecting the blue flags, and the key will have to do so in due course. But all these drivers romping and roaring their way around right now, and indeed it is still the question of pit stops, as Alexander Vingmark has Craig Hewlett breathing so far down his neck right now. As we look back from the rear of the number 2, well, this is pressure like no other, and Craig Hewlett at this point, I think he's just trying to find a way past if he can. Goes a little bit wide there as they come into 9 and 10. It's going to be too wide over the apex, and that's Hewlett on through. Hewlett does make it happen at long last. He'll be breathing a relief there, and here comes Nate Mayer as well, as there's contact between the two of them, but somehow Mayer keeps it pointed straight. I think Vingmark backed up immediately there to make sure it didn't get any worse, and for Mayer right now, how we kept that point in a straight line, it didn't end up being turned to the wall. Well, your guess is as good as mine. The 169 driver there would have been at the best part of about 130 miles an hour coming through that corner, and the car just completely went sideways and then went back on the straight. Although his tyres will definitely be very warm now, in fact to the point they will have a significant flat spot on them, but Name Mayer absolutely keeping it together there, and I think after the race he's definitely going to be asking himself, how on earth did that happen and how on earth did I survive it? Well, a bit of an unfortunate bit of contact, but both drivers have got away with it, to be fair. I think Vinmark as well will put his hand up and say, you know what, we both could have done a bit better in that one, but somehow we survived it. But as more pit stops now rain out, more is happening into turn number 1 here, as this is the long line of cars, all behind Sean Connor still, it should be pointed out. But Steve Hobbs, Nathan Anstis and Darren Sharples are all together here. I believe they've all pitted. Yes, they have. So therefore, this is for track position. It's the fight for 7th place in the Pro class. However, in amongst them all, they do have a Corvette, and that Corvette is in the form of what is Harvey Wheeler, who is your lead lap runner. So Wheeler right now, who has yet to pit, will find himself in what is most of the clear of the traffic now. In fact, he's only got one more car to go, but understandably, I wouldn't be surprised here if he's probably looking at this and thinking, how on earth did I end up in all this? Well, we're not quite sure, but what we are certain of is the fact that he's now found himself clear of most of it, and we can enjoy this battle as Anstis finds Sharples getting closer and closer. And will the old dudes in cars try and make the move on the UKSimRacing Finish driver? The answer is he's going to try to, but that's the difference in racing lines, as Anstis there using the cornering capabilities of the Porsche to hold ahead as Matthew Croft tries to get on the inside. Croft here being squeezed, but they come through the corner. My goodness, Darren Sharples breaking so late, almost tapping the rear of Anstis to keep ahead of Croft, but now it's going to be a drag race down the straight. It's going to be 2 V8s together. They're running door to door as they come into the break-ins over turn number 1. And right now, neither driver wants to back off here. This is pure muscle racing between the two. Both naturally aspirated V8 machinery. 6.3 litres of displacement in that Mercedes to the 5 litres in that Ford Mustang. And right now, Matthew Croft, for everything he's throwing at this, can't find a way through at the moment at least, but he is giving it some, and Darren Sharples says to him, no, you're not going to do so. We're going to fight this one all the way to the end, and Anstis will be hoping he can break away a little bit with this going on, as Steve Hobbs has left these guys behind, most certainly. But as they make the way around, we ride on board the front bumper of the 113 for Axis in Sport Z, and gets so close, switches back to the inside here. Croft's going to go for it into the uphill sweepers, and in the end, well, it's going to cost them both a lot of momentum. But Croft deciding, you know what, if I go for it somewhere unconventional, it costs us time, but I can put the man behind me at long last. And now will Darren Sharples come back at him here in towards the more conventional overtaking spots. Well, if he's going to do so from 4.5 tenths back, that's going to be the lunge of the century, and something tells me that Darren Sharples, as much as he has done some lunges in the past, he's got a very sensible head on him, and the old dudes in cars driver isn't going to risk it from that far back, at least for the time being. But as they come towards the end of their battle and the end of another turn of the circuit, what a battle that was. We look to the front of the group that's making its way across the start-finish line straight, and Henrik Zilka right now ahead of Sean Connor, the old dudes in cars driver, 5th in the Pro class, but he's still got some work to do as he tries to move forward. And well, his next target is Name Mayer, who is the best part of 10 seconds up the road. Sean Connor follows him. We'll now get to see whether Sean Connor's got the pace to really put an inconvenience on other drivers by being able to chase them down. Because I can tell you one thing, the 155 driver, he's definitely put himself as a driver of the day candidate by leading that long pack of cars for so long with a McLaren that definitely was not in the best of health, but still doing so well to keep it together, and in the end withstand that pressure. That is nothing easy as a driver, because the more cars you have behind you, the more you see a queue, it does get to you mentally, but not for Sean Connor, the American driver, definitely showing his credentials here today as a strong pro driver for this season. Back to the front of the field, all the way to the front and making another trip around the circuit before they pit is William Arnesen and Henrik Riise Strand of the BetaFrost team. Coming up the pit lane, that is Ross Young, who at the time was one of your top 3 drivers in the Pro class, and he'd come back out in 3rd place in the class. But Young has definitely demonstrated the fact that the leaders are going so quick around here that they've even been able to put a lap on the man all the way to 13th place before they've pitted, we should say. So therefore, when they do pit, they will be letting other drivers unlap themselves quite quickly. But again, Arnesen has been able to clear the lap down man. Meanwhile, Henrik Riise Strand, he has found himself just coming out behind, and the traffic has not been kind to the second member of the BetaFrost team in this running order today. It seems though he's had the worst of the traffic, whereas Arnesen's had the best of it. As we have had, hold up a second, we've had Hayden Miller have to come into the pit. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that we have had a what is a failure of the Corvette for Hayden Miller, and as a result, Sonny Andrea is now in third, and we have lost Hayden Miller from this race. Well, it's been a breakdown of the car. We can't get your replay of it, but that's a shock. It's a surprise, and the Phoenix Racing team will be absolutely gutted with the man who was battling with the Tartan Restec Italian for the third place spot on the elite podium. So Hayden Miller's bad luck has definitely struck him here today. After the good luck of Australia, when it's weighed itself out. But of course, the points matter here today. There were no points up for grabs in Adelaide last week. Into the pit lane, meanwhile, comes Shane Cotton. That was a last gasp dive to the pit lane. I thought the tyre barrier there was going to get some paintwork added to it, but not quite so. But the last our pit stoppers are gradually getting around to making their strategies count. But the more turns in this circuit, there's no doubt about it, or at least the tower of the racing at the circuit. Coming back to Steve Hobbs, meanwhile, he's on the back of Andrew Montine. And Montine in front of him right now, with the two heading together, as that is the Corvette in the foreground of Harvey Wheeler trying to make up some more progress. The Reagan Hobbs not able to find a way through, and Henrik Zilka as well under pressure there from Sean Connor, who's all over the back of him. And indeed, I think Zilka right now has found that Connor, once he's in a car that's definitely in good condition, he's not going to be dropped at any time. But behind these guys, Nathan Anstis and Matthew Croft are together. They're continuing to fight as Kyle Roy has made his way into the pit lane from, at the time, what's 5th place overall, albeit he is your pro leader, and we would expect based on that he will be leading the pro class when he leaves the pit lane. Peter Cox then may be the only pro driver who has yet to make a pit stop, although I will say this, remembering that Peter Cox started in 15th place in the pro class and all the way down in 46th, by staying out the longest of everybody, he has actually made up a lot of ground, and it'll be interesting to see when the UKSimRacing Herbert driver comes out in all of this. I wonder if we're going to see him come out inside the top 5 or right on the back end of it, because if so, that has got to be one of the biggest strategic leaps we have seen in the series history, at least in the last 4 seasons or so. We'll come to that shortly, ladies and gents. Max Wheeler's leaving the pit lane, and meanwhile we do have Miato coming out, and Riise Strand is also making his way on out, and I believe as we do see Croft and Ansted head down the start-finish straight for what will be the 34th time of asking. Right now, these drivers, well, as Riise Strand comes out there on the right-hand side of your screen, he'll be finding the traffic with them. Darren Sharples can't quite get ahead of his fellow Mustang driver, but he won't want to there, because he'll know that elite driver will pretty much come back past him as soon as humanly possible. But Anstis and what is Croft, they now have a bit of a timer on their battle before we will see Strand get involved into it. So, will Anstis be able to hold on here? Will he be able to potentially goad what will be Croft into having to give way under blue flags and buy himself some space? Because you can definitely see that Matthew Croft seems to be the quicker driver at the moment, particularly as the lap unwinds itself from turn 5 onwards. Anstis has got the speed in the portion in the corners, that's where we'd expect it. But he has not necessarily got it on the straights, and these sweepers as well, as that's very close there for Matthew Croft. Gets so close to the point I thought there would be contact, but through turns 9 and 10, Anstis goes a little bit slow over the apex of 10. In towards 11 they come, and it's a look around the outside there from Croft, but now here comes Strand right on the back of them. Where's he going to factor into this? As meanwhile, Peter Cox has come into the pit lane. We're watching him as he's being serviced. As I look out my commentator booth window, but all the fighting continues here, and right now this is not a happy space to be. You've got drivers on multiple laps on each other now, and Anstis and Croft are definitely putting a bit of a stopper to the progress of Strand, who's behind them, and he wants to get past them. On the pit lane exit here is Arnesen. Has he made the jump on Strand to get back ahead? The answer is yes, and the traffic has not helped his BetaFrost teammate, and that's really relegated them into the order they were before the pit stops, as it'll be deep there for Anstis, it'll be deep for Croft, but he comes back sooner. Anstis just about holds on. Meanwhile, Peter Cox, we were right in terms of where he's going to come out. He's come out right behind Steve Hobbs, so he's on the back end of the top 5 of the pro class now, and he's hoping that he can pass Steve Hobbs and perhaps even go after Sean Connor and Henrik Zilka for the podium, but he won't if he does that. And for Cox, he goes out wide. Does he lose places as Anstis gets closer and closer? Not quite, but Peter Cox right now, he's used up the last of his 9 lives in this race, and Anstis is right there with him. This is not a good spot for the UKSimRacing drivers, because Anstis is going to have to make a move here, otherwise Croft will go for him. So in the end, Cox right now trying to get himself back together on cold tyres. Anstis on the inside, heading towards turns 8 and 9, and in the end he backs off there, and Matthew Croft right now just can't find a way through, but Darren Sharples is queuing up. He's got to go around the outside. He does so on Anstis into 11, so Croft does take that place. Now here comes Sharples, and for Nathan Anstis, this is a lap of nightmares here, as he's just dropping down. It's all because he's come out of turn number 5, found his teammate in the way. Oh my good lord, and how on earth they all negotiated to that? I don't know. Tom Wheeler getting on through. Almost there, as it was also the Lamborghini of, I believe, that was the car of Pier Antonio Pasquarello, who in the end had to try and fit his way through. He's fallen down to the back end of the order, I believe, due to an incident he's been involved in. We'll see if we can get a replay of that when we can. But right now, my goodness, you've got drivers on multiple different laps, and they're all somehow finding a way to negotiate each other. And in fact, yes, there was an incident for Pietro Antonio Pasquarello only moments ago, and we'll get a replay of that shortly. But right now, Tom Wheeler at the back of this group, and Javi Sierra, they'll be looking at and thinking to themselves, why can't we get on through? And Sierra, in the end, trying to make his way around the outside of the Italian and the Lamborghini, but it's not going right there for the privateer in the 207, and he's having to just tuck in behind once again. But my goodness, what a sequence. And to give you some context as to why the elite driver's there and not inside the top 10, well, here's a quick replay to explain, ladies and gentlemen, because that's not where we expected to see him whatsoever. So this was Pietro Antonio Pasquarello at the time, running in 10th in elite. Took way too much apex curb there at turn number 7, and the rear of the car just slid into the barrier, and that was a toe to the pits. As quick as that, his race was dashed, ladies and gentlemen, and what a brutal way to see his race go wrong. And then we had this for Peter Cox only moments later after his pit stop, and this is what set off essentially what's a charge for 5th place into having to make a stoic defence for 6th in the Pro class. And well, he made his way too deep coming through turn number 5, and as he came out of 6, there was Nathan Anstis getting ready to queue up behind. But of course, he had to get himself back up to speed. Everyone else had the best part of about 20 miles an hour on him, and then they fanned out. Croft looked to the outside, Anstis looked to the inside, and Anstis made the right call. But then this is where it really lost out for Nathan Anstis as they made the way up to our static camera here. The speed of their approaching, absolutely sensational, and Croft had the move all set there from inside to outside. Croft came through, and then Darren Sharples also went for it here in this whole sequence of battling as they went onto the brakes into the left hand. They made their way, and well, like that, Nathan Anstis in the end lost out several places, all for the price of his rejoining teammate as Cox tried. And well, in fact, that was Croft there trying to see Mike Gunn on the inside, couldn't quite make it happen. And as they made their way down the start finish straight, we're still on the replay, we should point out here, Matthew Croft was still fighting for this, looked one way than the other, and Peter Cox was never going to let Croft have it easy here. But in the end, did he go around the outside? The answer was no. He was made to wait once again. With that, we head back to live racing, ladies and gentlemen, because this is definitely getting even more thrilling all the way to the final minutes. And so back we come, and with less than 10 minutes left on the clock right now. Well, I can tell you one thing, the battles for the victories in our respective classes, they may have come to a halt a long time ago, but the battles to be in the top 5s of the classes, they have not ended, and the battles towards the bottom end of the top 10s, nor have they. As we look to your class standings, which will gradually populate out as time goes on. But what we can see right now is every driver here still giving it their all, which is what we love to absolutely see. But looking a bit further down the order, Bruno Batica, well, he is in 28th, 10th in the Pro class. His nearest mark is Peter Cox, who in fact, since we've left him, Cox has gone down the order. I don't think we can get a replay of what's happened to Peter Cox, but the 168 driver, sadly, has dropped down to 9th place now in Pro, and Croft has moved up to 6th with Sharples just behind him, and then Nathan Anstis also getting on through. I wonder if there's a bit of follow-up there to after the replay footage, or Cox had made another mistake. We haven't quite got the information to be able to tell you that at this time, ladies and gentlemen, sadly. But either way, it's not quite gone the way it's wanted to for Peter Cox, and Matthew Croft has found his way eventually through, but not without having to absolutely strangle the life out of those places to make something happen for the British driver. But as the Axis Sport Z driver has done everything he can in that Mercedes, well, now he's got a 5-second gap to close down to Steve Hobbs, who's your 5th place runner in Pro. And I wonder whether he's going to be able to close that down in time. Has he got anything left given how hard he's had to fight? That's the problem that is going to confront him. But from him, well, meanwhile, we do continue to see our drivers all giving it what they can for what remains of this race. But the gaps have all started to space out quite considerably, even at the very front there. As we do see William Arnesen briefly putting his headlights on to send a bit of a message there to Henrik Zilka, which is that he's coming, albeit the BetaFrost driver will know. The old Dudes and Cars driver has got some long stretches to come up to shortly, as Max Wheeler has taken a trip to the worst. That's into the gravel there as he goes to rejoin, and he tries to rejoin, but I think that's a toe to the pits for Max Wheeler, so his race has gone backwards, and not in a good way, as Wheeler then drops on the toe. That's going to give a lot of drivers in the elite class an extra place, because he was at the time running inside the top 5 of elite. And well, right now it's not gone right at all for the Audi driver. In fact, I believe he's running towards the bottom end of the top 10 now, I correct myself. But either way, and Sean Connor under pressure there from Steve Hobbs. Well, Steve Hobbs and Sean Connor, they've been like this for what has been the majority of the race. However, now it's in equal machinery. When it comes to the health of the machinery, can Connor hold on to the 4th place spot, or does Steve Hobbs have one final trick up his sleeve? As out of the pit lane, that's Rob Windsor coming out for a second pit stop. So I think they've underfueled the car accidentally. But, well, he's got the pit stop out the way sooner rather than later, as the last thing you want to do is be the driver who's got to come into the pits on the penultimate lap and realise that you've got to do what is the splash and dash of shame, as they sometimes say, where it's a quick 3-second pit stop. But understandably, it's not the pit stop anybody wants to do, because it shows that you've got it rolling strategy. We'll see, as right now Connor and Hobbs are all together. Meanwhile, Bruno Batica, well, he's fighting Alexander Vinmark, the pro driver. He's in the wrong order in terms of fighting a load of Inter drivers, but to be fair, Vinmark right now I think will enjoy this, as Martin Kenya's going to get a bit closer. Batica looking around the outside, couldn't quite make it work, but the Portuguese driver here still working hard, and he'll see if he can make some magic happen before this one is said and done, with 6 minutes left. Kenya will be hoping that if Batica is able to, he'll push Vinmark towards him in the fight for 7th place in the Inter class. But not long left in this race now, but still the stakes are higher for certain positions out there. And we are definitely seeing some absolutely superb racing. And if this is what they're able to do, our drivers, at a circuit it is very tight and very difficult to overtake at, imagine what they're going to be able to do when we do make our way to none other than what is the Daytona circuit in only a week's time, where Slipstream is going to be one part of the story, and also plenty of heavy hairpins are going to be another part of the story. Well, that's definitely going to be one to watch out for, as meanwhile we come back to Sean Connor, who's still got Steve Hobbs right behind him. And these two drivers close together here, as close as you would like, as they roar the way on around. But Connor right now, the Connor Bros driver, just holding on that little bit longer. And Steve Hobbs here in a Ferrari that's got quite a bit of cornering capability, but of course it is a car that does a little bit better on those medium speed sections a lap. Connor Bros 155 right now, just holding on a little bit more in his McLaren 720 Evo. Coming in towards turns 9 and 10. The sparks fly from the under tray of the Americans machine, and Hobbs is not going anywhere away from it anytime soon. Although Hobbs does go a little bit deep there on the entry in towards turn 11, but that's the dirty air just washing out the front end of that Ferrari. And Connor will feel as though he's safe at least for now into turns 12 and 13, but he's going to have to do this for at least another 4 laps. But through they come then to complete this tour of the circuit, where it's their 41st lap, and they've got a bit more to go. As they make their way off into the distance, well, from them we come to Salvatore Ferrandino, who is all over the back of what is one of his drivers, who is a lap ahead at the moment. In fact, he's trying to put a lap on the driver, I do apologise. And that is Alexander Vinmark. And Vinmark right now your 7th place driver in the Interclass, down in 26th overall. Well, Ferrandino wants to pass him, and he wants to pass him soon, because Casper Brotner's there with him. And what a story it has been for Casper Brotner, has gradually caught up. But we've had a spin on what has been the run out of the final quarter for Rhys Saunders. He hasn't lost a place, I don't think. But what he has done is, in the fact, he's dropped further back in 4th place over on Elite to Jakub Stofko, who now has eyesight of him. But then looking a bit further back from them, there's the Brockner versus Ferrandino battle. So this is still to conclude, and they are finding a huge traffic jam ahead of them. So this is not going to be nice. We look down over the nose there at the 227. The Danishman right now on a mission to try and make up the time as he comes through turn number 3 and 4. But this is the very difficult part here, because everybody's on tyres now that are very heavily worn. At least 2 of the tyres, if not all 4. Also at this point, it's tired arms, tired legs, and also tired temperaments. And for Ferrandino, he's got to pick his way first between the 3 cars that are going to be a lap down ahead of him. And Brockner has the wonderful opportunity here to watch, wait and listen, and see if he can use the Lamborghini driver as a little bit of a proverbial battering ram to help him get through the traffic, and then also capitalise on that to take the place. But if he can do so, well, he's going to have to be a bit closer than this, because being half a second back, albeit in a Ford Mustang that's better on the straight. And you can see that, my good lord, the run there out of turn number 11. Well, he's taking the words right out of my mouth. I think he's listening right now as Brotner as they come through that left-hander at turn number 12. And I think if he was about half a tenth closer, he would have gone all in for that move. And Ferrandino, I don't think would have had a response. But that's the speed that Mustang picks up coming out of what is turns 9 and 10. It's so quick there in the mid-engine gearbox, and was a roar the way onwards towards another lap. Right now, Ferrandino's got all the speed in the corners in that Lamborghini, but this Mustang is something else. As soon as it gets into fourth gear, it's almost as if it's in a different world. But the fighting in front of them also has a bit of intrigue to it, because that battle is going on between Nick Parks. Oh, Parks onto the grass. He rejoins. And as he does so, great evasive work there for Martin Kenyon, who goes down the outside of him. And Parks almost taps the rear of him there with dirt on the tyres. It causes the car to slide deep. But Parks in the end just about survives that. I think they both do. And I think both drivers will be very happy to know that it could not have gone any better than that. Meanwhile, from them, we come back to the Connor Hobbs battle. And, well, here comes Steve Hobbs. This time he's got the run. Surely he's got to think about it around the outside. But will he commit to the outside, or will he switch it back? Connor puts in the middle of the road. Hobbs tries to turn into the middle of the road as well. I think he was expecting for a switchback, but Connor thought it was going to come and said, no, I know what you're trying to do. I'm just going to put myself right there. What will you be able to do? Well, from them, we come to the Ferrandino versus Brotner battle. It's all kicking off now in their fight, as well as the Hobbs and Connor battle with the Pro class. But Ferrandino there, getting his elbows out nice and wide to make sure that Brotner knows if he wants to place for 7th in the elite class, he's going to have to work a little bit harder than that to make it happen. It's not going to be that easy. Bex now to the final quarter. Well, car tugging into the pits. That's Batika, who's underfilled, it would seem, and needs to come in on what will be his penultimate lap of racing. And Ferrandino right now looking up the inside there. I think Mark to take the place, and immediately Brotner comes through as well. That's the battering ram effect we were saying about, whereby the lead car, when you're battling this close together, the lead car comes up on some traffic and the car behind immediately gets the right to come on through typically. Back to Connor versus Hobbs. And Connor going defensive, and so defensive at that point. I think if he'd gone any tighter to the apex there, he would have been straight line in the corner. Hobbs looks around the outside. Is it going to work for the Sim Coach driver? The answer is no. And he's still on that outside line as he commits his way around the corner. And away turn. That's going to open up an opportunity there for Pietro Antonio Pasquarello to come on through as the white flags wave. Not for them, but for our race leaders already gone on to lap number 46. And Hobbs right now, well, he's not going to find a way in here as the elite driver tries to unlap himself. So the clock strikes 0, and this battle right now has definitely taken a different turn. But as these drivers come together, meanwhile, here is your race leader. He is on your last tour of the circuit. He'll complete a 46th and final lap. And for William Arnesen right now, it's 3.5 seconds to his teammate of Henrik Strand, who is there for BetaFrost. They're going to make it 1-2. But right now, I don't think there's any response from Strand to try and be the leading name in that 1-2 configuration. But that's, I think, the way it's going to go all the way to the end with Andrea Miato. After that brilliant battle between himself and Hayden Miller for the majority of the race. Well, for Miller, it was an unfortunate technical retirement with the car, and therefore Miato has been able to pick up the pieces. But right now, he'll be very happy that third place either way. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as he makes his way in towards the final corner for William Arnesen, it was pole position today by the smallest of margins versus his teammates. And in the end, he's been in full control the entirety of the race. It's going to be victory for William Arnesen as he comes to the finish line. Your winner in the end for BetaFrost, ahead of Henrik Strand, who comes up in second place. It's a 1-2 for the BetaFrost outfit in the elite class. And then in third, 20 seconds behind, well, he's got a long queue of cars ahead of him, but the good news for him is he won't have to deal with them anymore, because for Andrea Miato, it is going to be a first podium of the season there for the Tartan Restec driver, as he crosses the finish line in third, ahead of Riise Saunders, who is a further 16 seconds back. We've got Saunders just coming up through shortly through the final quarter, and that spin, did it cost them the chance for a podium? No, the podium definitely seemed out of his reach today, but the Altitude 3M Esports driver will be very happy either way with that full place finish, ahead of, hold up, Jakob Stofko's run out of fuel. That's Harvey Wheeler who comes across the line in fifth, then for Freewheeler racing by Phoenix, with the Miracle Group M Esports driver coming home sixth in the end, behind ahead of Kyle Roy, his teammate who takes the first pro win of the season, the Academy driver. Well done to him. Ahead of Salvatore Ferrandino and Casper Brotner, who finished where they were when we left them. Ross Young is going to finish this race in the end. In 10th place for DXT Motorsport, and the Scotsman comes across that line. He'll be very happy with that, and then it'll be from his 10th to 11th for Tim Perry, who is going to be your last lead lap finisher. But as he comes on through, well, there's one other driver we do need to take a look to, as we look to your second place finisher in the Interclass, a lap down the end of Andrew Martin. Well done to him on a brilliant drive there for the run-up spot in the class for Axis in Sport Z, and well, it was third place in said class for Tom Wheeler here in the three-wheeler racing by Phoenix Ford Mustang, and what a race he's had to go through to come all the way through to that third place spot in the end. And well, we also need to give a shout out to your third place finisher in the Pro class of Henrik Zilko, as the lap down was classified for old dudes in cars. But you know, one driver we haven't given a shout out to, and that is none other than, of course, what was your winner in the Interclass, and that was Craig Hewlett. So in fact, we could go back in time and show crossing the finish line, ladies and gentlemen. And here we go then, as we take a look back to Craig Hewlett, taking his race win as well. And well, as the checker flag came out for Craig Hewlett, it was a lap down, with the leaders making their way ahead of him. There was your race winner, but here was Hewlett, who in the end, after taking the lead where everybody else got it wrong, including Robin Aston at the start, Hewlett didn't put a foot wrong, and he's taken an inter-win today that's going to mean a huge amount for him and the team, as it really was his race to lead all the way to the finish. And what a job well done from Craig Hewlett. So as he makes his way onwards, well, we are going to make our way back to the live circuit side pictures, and with that, we're going to take a look at your results, subject to any insurance inquiries. So as the circuit falls silent, ladies and gentlemen, what a race it has been. And here are your race results for round number 1 of Season 17 of the SimRacing International hosted UKSimRacing GT3 Championship on Sundays. And as we saw at the Sachsenring, William Arnesen, your overall winner in the end, leading home a 1-2 head of teammate Henrik Riise Strand. The two BetaFrost drivers there really in a class of their own today, both elite and overall. Andrea Miato finished third in the end with a titanic battle with Hayden Miller, but only one could come out on top. And in the end, due to a technical retirement for Miller, it was Miato who made it happen. The Tartan ResTech driver then being followed up a further 15 seconds behind by Reece Saunders, the Altitude 3M eSports driver in the Ford, doing well despite the spin to make sure fourth was his in the end. Harvey Wheeler took fifth for three-wheeler racing by Phoenix ahead of Jakub Stofko, with the Miracle Group M eSports driver running out of fuel at the finish and being denied the fifth and having to settle for sixth. Kyle Roy, what a drive from him. And in the end, the Miracle Group M Academy driver looked untouchable at the head of the Pro class, albeit he didn't dominate the race. However, nobody was able to quite get close enough as the race went on, and he'll definitely be pleased with that to know he set the pace in the Pro class today in his Corvette ahead of Salvatore Ferrandino, with a Tartan ResTech Lamborghini driver in the end, while making it home in 8th, but 9, it was him and him alone inside that top 10 overall, and his teammate wasn't quite able to come with him. And we did see none other than Casper Brotner, who was 9th for Old Dudes in Cars, ahead of Ross Young for DXT Motorsports, who was your runner-up and 10th overall in the Pro class. And we had Tim Perry at best of rest there in 11th place for Altitude 3M Esports. It was a lap down from that point onwards for many a driver, including your inter-winner, who was 12th of Craig Hewlett. Well done to the Axis Sport Y driver in a very well-controlled run to victory in that 12th place, ahead of Henrik Zilka for Old Dudes in Cars, who rounded off your Pro podium. Sean Connor did very well to finish 4th in class and 14th overall, and the Connor Bros driver there really having perhaps the most pressured race of anybody today, and how he withstood it we'll never know. That's testament to his mental fortitude. Steve Hobbs finished just behind in there in 15th for Sim Coach, but was ahead of Andrew Montine, who was your runner-up in the Interclass. Well done to the Exodus Sport Z driver, who was ahead of his teammate Matthew Croft. Javi Sierra, Tom Wheeler and Grant Miller rounded off your top 20, with Tom Wheeler in the end for three-wheeler racing by Phoenix, rounding off the Inter-podium in that 19th place. Grant Miller then, the sister team driver for Phoenix Racing Med, will be very pleased with that 20th place to round off the day and 4th place in Inter, but we'll come on to the class position shortly as we just round off the overall finishing positions. And Nathan Anstis in the end, despite a very challenging race, he was able to secure 6th place in the Pro Class, 21st overall. But he did have a queue of cars forming up behind him towards the end, including Alexander Vingmark, Martin Kenyon, Nick Parks and Darren Sharples. It was a challenging race for Robin Pownier, with that instant at turn number 12 midway through the race really consigning him to what was a 26th place finish, rather than finishing up towards the top 20. But still, he'll recover from that one going into the next round, as will Shane Cotton, with a few bumps and scrapes along the way. Bruno Battiga Batika, Thomas Barjuk and Ashley Brooks completed your top 30, with Brooks being 2 laps down. And as we continue our way through the finishing order overall, it was also 2 laps down to the likes of Pietro Antonio Pasquarello, the Tartan Restec driver, who in the end had to leave his teammate Salvatore Ferrandino to be a bit lonely inside the top 10 after a mistake at turn number 7 saw him make haste to the wall. Max Wheeler was 32nd ahead of Adam Hedgecock, with Rob Windsor 3 laps down, as was David Young, Andrew Fellows, Gilles Lequy, and then it was sadly 9 laps down as classified at the finish to Peter Cox for a late retirement for the UKSimRacing Herbert outfit, and it was also retirements along the way for Shane Connor, Hayden Miller, and also Nate Mayer, Neville Harris, Robin Aston, Daniel Pays, Alex Brown, Leo Mink, Richard Jones and Noah Blackwell, who in the end could not complete a single lap, sadly due to an issue with the car. Coming into the class finishing positions, these are the ones that matter the most because this is where all the points are stored. Whereas we see William Arnesen in the elite class taking that victory in the end by just shy of 4 seconds over his teammate Henrik Strand, and the two have set the pace at the front of the field, but Arnesen seems to be number 1. Andrea Miato in the end at taking 3rd place. The Italian driver will be absolutely ecstatic with that podium for Tartan Restec, ahead of Alchi Frem Esports' Reece Saunders, and Harvey Wheeler in the end completing that top 5, knowing that today it was 6th place until it was the 5th at the finish line. The three-wheeler racing by Phoenix driver, then followed up by the man who ran out of fuel with only 200 metres to go, Jakob Stofko, who rolled to the line for Miracle Group M Esports, but what a drive from him to start 8th and finish 6th when he was almost on course for a 5th place. And then we did see Salvatore Ferrandino 7th ahead of Casper Brotner, with Tim Perry and Javi Sierra completing that top 10. It was a lap down for Sierra, and it was 2 down for Pietro Antonio Pasquarello and also Max Wheeler, and it was a sad retirement, sadly, for Hayden Miller. From the Phoenix Racing Blues at Woes then to what was the victory screams of your winner in the Pro class, Kyle Roy there, your winner by 21 seconds almost for Miracle Group M Academy, and in the end he was able to take the lead early on and just gradually break away, whereas everybody else was stepping on each other's toes. However, the one who stepped on the most toes to make sure he finished second was Ross Young for DXT Motorsports, and what a job well done from him. Head of Old Dudes in Cars is Hendrik Zilka, who rounded off your podium. He was classified as a lap down due to when the race finished under the overall leader, ahead of Sean Connor for Connor Bros, who just missed out on the podium, but to be fair, if he can take a fall today with a McLaren that definitely required a lot of repair work for the opening 30 minutes of the race, imagine what he could do in a completely clean car over 60 minutes. That's what we look forward to seeing at Daytona. Steve Hobbs was 5th for Sim Coach, fighting hard with Connor in the closing stages, but couldn't quite find a way through, but he was ahead of Matthew Croft, who finished just behind him for Axis SimSport Z, and it was UKSimRacing Manish's Nathan Anstis ahead of Darren Sharples, while the Old Dudes in Cars driver finishing ahead of Bruno Batika and Ashley Brooks. Adam Hedgecock took 11th place there for Alchi 3M Esports, 2 laps down, much like Brooks. And then we did see 3 laps down to Rob Windsor, with unfortunate retirements for Peter Cox, Nate Mayer, and Noah Blackwell. And a special mention there to Nate Mayer in particular, who was looking impressive all the way through to the race until he met his untimely demise with the barrier. We then come finally to the Interclass. And then we can see in our newly formed Interclass, the first ever Inter winner in a points race for this series was Craig Hewlett in the end by 16.4 seconds for Axis SimSport Y over the sister team driver of Andrew Benteen for Axis SimSport Z. So it's a 1-2 for Axis SimSport here, and Tom Wheeler rounded off the podium there and prevented it to be an all-free party, but the 33 driver there definitely delivered well, given the pressure that was on him. That pressure came from Grant Miller all the way through the race, with the Phoenix Racing Red driver just missing out on the podium by 2 seconds, but he was comfortably the best part of 30 seconds ahead of Alexander Vingmark. But credit where it's due to the BetaFrost driver on his debut, delivering a 5th place finish, and definitely will be one to watch. He held off Martin Kenyon at the close of the DXT Motorsports driver, I think feeling frustrated, knowing that it was his win to take today, but unfortunately, some incidents early on cost him dear. The Lamborghini driver followed up by the Ford Mustang of Nick Parks, who had Robin Parino close behind at the end, and it was Shane Cotton and Thomas Barjuk who completed your top 10. It was 2 laps down for David Young for logistical Nightmare Racing, who definitely got on top of the Nightmare as it went on during the day. He was ahead of Andrew Fellows, with Gilles Lequy finishing off your running order there in 13th place. They were your finishers, and it was sadly retirements for Shane Connor, also for Neville Harris, also for Robin Aston, Daniel Pays, Alex Brown, Leo Mink, Richard Jones, and I do believe as well, well, in fact, that was everyone, ladies and gentlemen, but a frustrating end to the race for a number of drivers there, particularly for the slow and steady racing driver, who in the end was only able to achieve what was the best part of 2 laps before his retirement. But with that, that concludes our rundown of the finishing position, subject to any stewards' inquiries, and with that, that means it's now time for us to wrap up. So if you have enjoyed today's broadcast and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the SimRacing International series that we do host on what is a weekly basis, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend that you head to our official Discord. Invite link at the bottom of your screen. It's the beating heart of the community, and you won't find any more information than by going to the Discord. And if you do join and you want to be on the grid, we have got plenty of racing for you, whether it be on weekdays on Thursday evenings, our official GT3 Championship, which has just kicked off its 11th season with 120 drivers once again taken to the grid in all its glory. Alternatively, on Sundays, like today, you've been tuning in to the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship in its 17th season. And if you're looking for something slightly different, well, we take a trip back in time to 2023 and bring you Season 1 of the GTE Championship on Fridays. Yes, the cars that GT3's replaced in the world as of 2024, but what a season that has been so far as well. But if you're looking for something entirely casual and free to join, we can always join our practice leagues, which do run on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Saturdays in GT3s and GTEs, replicating what is the schedule for our official series. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we also need to say a big thank you to what is our series and league sponsors, who do include none other than Carme, Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and last but not least, Motorsport UK's esports division. And a huge thank you to them for continuing to recognise us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community, and long may that continue throughout 2026. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we must turn our attentions to a week's time, because as the Sachsenring has set the stakes high, well, at Daytona, it's only going to be even more different, because today's race was all about a tight circuit and strategy being absolutely vital. And in some respects, you can say strategy will be vital at Daytona, but it's going to be about who is smart with the draft and do the maximum possible fuel saving, who may just come away victorious in the United States of A. So with that, as our drivers get ready to head to Daytona Raceway, who's going to come out victorious there? Will it be another 1-2 in the elite class for BetaFrost? In the pro class, we saw so many impressive performances, but none more so than Miracle Academy's driver of Kyle Roy. And in the interclass, in a lead that swapped hands more times than any other class today, Craig Hewlett was the one to stand tall, but with a different complexion of circuit, will he be able to do so again in Florida in a week's time? Well, for all that and more, come tune in as we bring you the racing action as if it were live on Monday the 19th of January 2026, the day after. But until then, we have been SimRacing International. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.